problem is I don't know how to get PCTV. They are also on the old meeting.
Can they use the same link?
Well, I went onto the website because some of them are claiming that there's somehow there's another link.
Exists. Do we have any public comments? And MCC Zoom, I'm going to ask you to unmute if your comment is on this resolution.
Yeah, this is Greg Diegas from the MCC. I can't change my name to say that the way you set the meeting up. I just wanted to make a comment that, and some of you are aware of this, that we've offered to split the costs of equipment necessary to host hybrid or virtual meetings with GCSD. I've gotten some authorization for money to spend. It's unclear to me at this point what we're going to decide to do, but I hope to meet with Delia and Nancy with you in the coming few days and make a decision on what, if anything, we need to do right away. And then, of course, we could always defer a decision and get more elaborate later. But the expenditures, I think Captain Bay Chamber of Commerce spent $7,000, and that seems excessive, but there are other things we could do. In the meantime, PCZB has told me we can support by projecting on that wall screen, as you probably saw when we did the test. So I just wanted you to know we're open to expanding and improving the capability, but we don't have a good spec yet for what we're going to do finally. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Okay, any other comments on the resolution? Oh, okay, then Delia, can you do a roll call? It was moved by Matthew and seconded by Barbara.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Grant.
Yes.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
And Director Randall.
Aye.
Okay, approved 5-0.
Okay, I'm going to back up now to general public participation. Public members may comment on matters under that are not on the agenda at this time. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and please raise your hand. And when you raise your hand, I will ask you to unmute. Actually, Greg, you are still unmuted, so go ahead.
Thanks. I wanted to mention, it's pretty clear, I think, to all of us, we have an infrastructure deficit out here, both physical and fiscal in the mid-coast. My goal and hope is to have the MCC create work groups advancing a series of campaigns via reports, articles, presentations, emails, and general pestering of our county management to address topics such as sewer, stormwater drainage, telecommunications, evacuation, medical and healthcare, schools, and wildfire. I already have a 24-page draft of a telecommunications connectivity report in front of me, which I expect to present on March 8th. I hope you will ask people in your jurisdiction with technical and writing skills to join one of our work groups in researching and documenting these infrastructure deficiencies and recommendations, and those without those skills to join in rabble-rousing, publicizing, and galvanizing support for a community effort to prepare things for Supervisor Mueller to support his CRISP, or Coastside Resilience Infrastructure Strategic Plan, and trying to get us some money and action on a variety of infrastructure fronts. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Okay, I don't see any other hands up for comments not on the agenda. So we'll move on to the first item. Item number 2, which is to approve a resolution expressing gratitude and appreciation to Rick Lohman, for his years of service to the district. Barbara, would you like to cover that resolution, or should I read it out?
I don't know that we need to read the whole resolution, but I would like to speak to it. I would like to make a motion to approve it. Rick Lohman got me into this. I became friends with him through his wife, who's very involved with Coastside Land Trust, as am I, and got to meet him. And he's the one who said, "Oh, you should take this. I'm going to move from Miramar to Montera, and my seat will be vacant, and you should apply for it." And that's what I did. Through the time that I knew Rick, through all these years, he was very smart, very community oriented, really cared about what was best for this community. And I know that as only having lived here for 8 years, I'm a relative newcomer, but I am also very aware of the many years of service that he gave to the MCC, to the Special Districts Association, to state parks support, to all kinds of community efforts to make things better here and to try to think through the best way to manage our coastside infrastructure. So this resolution goes into some detail. Some of it's a duplicate of what the sewer authority said, but that's because we also recognize the same things that he did for the sewer authority that, were included in their resolution. I think it's very appropriate for us to recognize someone who served on the board for many years and served this community so well. So I'm very honored to make the motion to approve this resolution to recognize the work of Rick Lohman.
Thank you, Barbara. And actually, for the attendees who may not know, Rick Lohman passed away in January as a former district board member, MC Montero Water and Sewer District board member, SAM board member, and LAFCO board member. Matthew.
Thank you. I had suggested that the resolution be read aloud, but I agree that it's too long to do that. I would just like to say that Rick was also a good friend of mine. We worked together and we played together some, and he was a really smart guy with a full breadth of comprehension of all the different directions that things could go that he became involved with. And he was always willing to talk with everyone about what their point of view was. He didn't denigrate people who just agreed with him, and he was just generally a great guy. And I'd also note that he had a great sense of humor. It was very dry. However, it was that was mostly seen in his public appearances. When you were one-on-one with him, he made hilarious remarks a lot of the time. And the other is that he probably had the worst taste in movies of anyone I've ever known.
Sharknado. I fell prey to his enthusiasm several times and went to see some really terrible movies. And Rick always just enjoyed the hell out of them. So that was just another side of him that I thought I would mention. But it's a shame we lost him, and I think we should carry on in his spirit. Thank you.
Thank you.
You to second my motion, Matthew?
Oh, I would love to second your motion, yes.
Okay. I only knew Rick briefly, but he gave me my first briefing on GCSD before I joined the Parks Advisory Committee. I'm going to open up for any public comments. I see Haggerty has his hand up first. Dan, I'm just asking you to unmute.
Yes. Very, very sorry to hear about Rick. Good friend, very positive community member. I haven't been on the GCSD. Good evening, everyone. meetings in a while, and it's looking very different. I got on, I clicked on Zoom, joined the Zoom meeting, and I was waiting in another room. I don't know if anybody is aware of this right now, but there were a lot of other members in the community waiting in another room, and we didn't know what was going on. So I don't know how many members are in the community are actually on right now. You don't have that available.
Yeah, we do have 25 members of the community on now, and I think Delia visited the other site to explain to people how to come over. This is our first time using new technology and without our GM. So we are
Curious, why is it that I can't see who else is on the meeting? It's very unlike a public meeting. It doesn't seem to be as public.
It's the webinar format, which some of the other public agencies do use. If you click on participants, you can see everybody who's on. You just won't see them on the screen.
Yeah, no, I don't have that option.
It should be at the bottom of your screen.
It's not. I have chat, Q&A, show captions, reactions, and lower hand.
Yeah, I don't actually think attendees can see the participant list. I think only panelists can.
Well, this is actually our first time, Dan. I can tell you we have 35 total participants.
Okay, well, I won't take any more time. I just want to say I'm very concerned with what may happen with the post office lot. I think most of you know my concerns over the years. Yeah, I'm very concerned that the character of our downtown block will be destroyed. And I'm urging and pleading, please, can the GCSD communicate with the Harbor District and, just have a conversation, have a public conversation, hopefully to come up with some ideas of some kind of a low impact use of that property. And maybe, there could be an open portion that the GCSD could help manage,
Dan, I'm sorry. I hear your point. We are actually in public comments now for a resolution appreciating Rick Lohman. So.
Oh, I just heard public comment in general. Okay, so
that was earlier. Sorry.
I missed that.
Okay, but we are aware of the law.
I'm not able. Okay, well, other people are here. Yeah, God bless Rick Lohman, and I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to Chris. Chris, if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I am.
Hey there, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Nancy? Okay.
Yes.
I want to express my condolences to Rick's family, but also to the Midcoast community. I fully support your resolution. I know you don't have time to read it tonight, but I think it's important that any person who lives on the Midcoast now know the legacy of Rick Lohman. Maybe you could print that out and put it in the 3 Midcoast post offices, because new people that have moved here maybe don't know Rick, or didn't get a chance to know him, but his legacy is enormous, and I don't think there's a special district or a government organization that Rick didn't touch or wasn't involved in. And really, for me, a role model in public participation in local government. I definitely miss his presence already. It's because the institutional knowledge that he carried forth, not to mention the other attributes that people have already mentioned, is irreplaceable. I mean, so I'm really sad about it, missing him as a person, but also as somebody looking out for our community. I also want to say it's no coincidence that he is an alumnus of GCSD. I think GCSD when I think of people that have served that long and have that great of a caring for the community and understanding of the community, man, GCSD really puts those people out. Matthew Clark and Leonard Warren and Barbara Dye and Nancy and hopefully the new members of the GCSD. But I really think people need to know everything about Rick's legacy. And so I really hope that I see the tribute put up in the post offices, and I fully support your resolution. And thank you for doing that. And thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Fran, I see your hand up. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I just want to say I agree with what everybody said, and I agree with everything on that resolution. It's beautifully done, and he was a wonderful person. I think he was on the district when I was on in the early 2000s, and worked with him on many issues and throughout the community. And we, yes, are all going to miss him very much. He was a real asset to the community. So, and yes, my condolences to the family also. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Fran. Barbara, your hand is still up. Did you want to say more?
No, I took it down, but I just wanted to highlight one very short phrase in here, which is something that he wrote when he applied for the Mid-Coast Community Council, which were his 3 principles. Number 1, to preserve the unique coastside environment. 2, to require environmental studies for all critical or controversial projects. 3, and to ensure that all coastsiders have an opportunity to provide input on community issues. I think that kind of sums up his priorities. And that's what he stated when he was running for the MCC. So.
Great, thank you. Well, we have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Delia, will you do the roll?
Yes, Director Clark. Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Dye.
Yes.
Director Grant.
Yes.
Director Marsh.
Yes.
And Director Randall.
Aye.
5-0, motion approved.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 3, Parks and Recreation Activities. First, with a report on the proposed recreation center. We're going to do 2 things. One is I have a follow-up to some of the follow-up items from our October meeting when we first reviewed the proposed design of the center, and we had a lot of public comments and questions. So we have a follow-up to that. We will, after that short presentation, we will take questions from the board for clarification, come out to public comments, and then we'll move on to Don Merkes from Group 4, who has a presentation with the outcome of the community survey that Group 4 managed in December. Excuse me, an update on the design for the center. And again, we'll have board questions, public comments, board discussion, coming to a decision on moving that proposed design forward. So we'll start with just the follow-up on October. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, you guys can see that, right?
I can.
Okay, good, thank you. When I got to this point in our practice session, my whole computer crashed, so that was a relief. In one of the questions that came up in October, and I'm just going to do this quickly, is what is GCSD? Is that like our city council? GCSD is what's called an independent special district under a state government code for special districts, and its scope is sewers and trash, which it's had since 1958, and since 2014, including parks and recreation. The parks and recreation was added after about 7 years of effort and 2 rounds of ballot initiatives to address what San Mateo County Parks had identified as a significantly underserved area for parks and recreation in the unincorporated county. And GCSD offered to shift its property tax money, which had been going towards sewers, to establish a parks and recreation function in the district. The district includes North Miramar for parks, includes North Miramar, unincorporated Miramar, El Granada, Princeton, and Princeton by the Sea. And so that is who we are. I am not going to cover all this. I just apologize for us running so late and the technical problems. But we have been working since 2015 on finding parks and recreation facilities and programming. So it's not really a new thing. And starting in about 2018, watching for, when we started the park planning in earnest, watching for potential properties for a community recreation center. We did actually look at the post office, the lot next to the post office, which now we think we understand would be too small. I think that's what the Harbor District found when they found that they couldn't even manage a 3,000 square foot office building on that property. We also evaluated the old El Granada fire station as a potential community recreation center. We developed kind of our minimum requirements for a community recreation center. The fire station just met the minimum, but with some awkwardly shaped rooms with those truck bays and a big question mark as to whether it would have enough parking. In any case, it wasn't on the market and the fire department had no timeline for when it might be on the market. Our Parks Advisory Committee had a learning session with the rec directors of Half Moon Bay and Pacifica, and their input also helped shape what would be our minimum requirements for a community recreation center. The Picasso preschool was not on the horizon then. We had no idea that it would ever be for sale. But in March of 2021, it was listed for sale as a turnkey preschool business, the business and the property joining together to try to sell it. Initially, they only were entertaining offers or interest from entities that would be operated as a preschool. GCSD found out some in about May that the property was for sale, and we thought at that time under contract, and we offered a backup offer for the property only, which the property owner accepted as a backup. When they were unsuccessful, and I think they had 3 different suitors evaluating it as a potential ongoing preschool, but when they were unsuccessful finding a preschool provider to acquire it, the property owner accepted GCSD's offer. GCSD's intent from that point was to acquire the property as a community recreation center adjacent to the park. We continued the lease with the preschool at that point for 2 years because it would take us, we assumed, at least that long to do the planning for a preschool. And we also agreed at that time as a board to evaluate in our planning whether the facility could include what was termed a small preschool within the community recreation center. It did take us a year to come to a complete contract with Group 4 Architects. And we formed a project management team with them in August of 2022. 2022. In the meantime, we were visiting community recreation centers with and without childcare, learning what the requirements are, learning how others use their CRCs. When it took us so long to complete the contract with Group 4, we then agreed to extend the preschool lease through August of 2024. So it has another 18 months on the lease. Due to space limitations that we went through briefly, I'll cover again briefly here. We did propose in October at our October review that we were not recommending inclusion of a licensed childcare facility within the CRC due to space limitations. We had a pretty robust community discussion with a number more questions. And that's the purpose of this presentation, is to follow up on those questions. So I will move ahead from there. Today, we're looking to move to a final recommendation on whether or not to include a child care facility or preschool in the CRC design. As I said, we at the October meeting, we did not include it. The key questions that were raised in the discussion had to do with whether what we were proposing was an appropriate size for the community, meaning did we need all of that space for a community recreation center? What was the potential for community utilization? Would it really be used? The last thing we would want is to build a beautiful empty building. And lastly, comparison to other small recreation centers that do include licensed childcare facilities, what some termed hybrid centers. I want to just distinguish some of the language here because the term preschool in a lot of the communication is used to mean both the place and the curriculum. Picasso Preschool is really two things. It's a licensed childcare center that meets the licensing requirements for a childcare center that focuses on preschool and a preschool curriculum. These things can be together like they are at preschool, they can be separate. We are not declining to include preschool content in a community recreation center. A community recreation center in a flexible space can include education. It is just the requirements for a licensed preschool space that give us a space challenge, but I'll go through that. Since that meeting, we've also estimated costs and considered phasing of construction and have completed the outreach survey. I asked Pat Tierney, since 2015, the district has had a Parks Advisory Committee. Fortunate for all of that time to have Pat Tierney, who was a recently retired professor of Parks and Recreation and Tourism at San Francisco State. And I asked him to give me a definition of what is a community recreation center, just to kind of refocus on what it is we're trying to build. It's a hub for all members of the community, youngest and oldest, to safely gather for group activities, health and fitness, social support, events and learning that enhances individual well-being and community pride and cohesion. So we are really focusing on something that serves the entire community. Learning is routinely under the heading of recreation. And so early childhood programs, early childhood learning could certainly be included in a CRC. Sorry, I have to move where the people are so I can see the slide. The first question was, and I think it came from former Director Sukamel, how do we know that this is the appropriate size? We're proposing a 6,000 square foot community recreation center, which is the largest that can be built on this space with the zoning limitations for the space. The National Recreation and Parks Association actually recommends 1 square foot of indoor community space per capita in a temperate climate like ours. Our population, we pulled the 2020 census, is about 5,500 people in El Granada. When we add in North Miramar and Princeton, we estimate the population is actually about 6,000 people. So we didn't actually pull up the NRPA recommendations until after the October meeting, but according to their recommendations, this is an exactly right-sized community recreation center for the size of the district. However, this facility would be the only public community indoor facility in the unincorporated mid-coast, so it would likely serve a larger population. So we're confident that the size is a reasonable size that we're proposing for the recreational use. Second question was, are we sure it's going to be used? Basically, have we done a review of usage? I had a good discussion with Eddie Bealey, who runs the Ted Adcock Center, just to benchmark similar type population that would use with similar interests with the Half Moon Bay Center. They are consistently programmed for recreation programming 30 hours a week and about 10 hours a week of event rental. They also have periodic art classes, camps, bridge club, blood drives, and other things. So their average usage over time is more than 30 hours a week. But the thing that is a little unusual about them compared to every other CRC I visited is that they don't have any activities on site for school-age kids or for seniors, who are usually large users of community recreation centers. And that's mainly because in Half Moon Bay, senior programming is provided by senior co-siders and senior adult day health. And after-school programming is provided by Boys and Girls Club in conjunction with the schools. We have reached out to both of those organizations. Director Dye talked to senior co-siders. I met with the board of the Boys and Girls Club just on Tuesday evening. They have both expressed great interest in providing programming at our new center to get them, in this area and a little farther from Half Moon Bay. We've also had interest from the El Granada CERT community, Co-Site Hope, who did about 40 vaccine clinics in their parking lot over the last 2 years for want of any other available public space. Village of the Coastside, which focuses on aging in place, and Master Gardeners. So we're pretty confident that with a leader who really reaches out to the community to program the space for recreation programming of all ages, that we should have fairly robust utilization. And lastly, I think it was Lauren Wilson suggested that we find other small community recreation centers that we hadn't visited that do include childcare, and specifically those in San Mateo. So I did visit actually 5 different centers in San Mateo. 2 of them were solely childcare centers with preschool. They have playgrounds that they share with the local park when the preschool is not in session. But these 3 are recreation centers in San Mateo that do include childcare. Beresford, MLK, and Highlands. MLK is not currently offering childcare preschool, but they do have 1 room that they have in the past used for that. And the main learning there is that all 3 of these sites, even though they're perceived as being small sites that are hybrid sites that include meet the qualifications for licensed childcare facilities, they are all 2 or more times the size of the small facility we're talking about. I think it's hard to get a sense of scale, but this would be the second smallest CRC that we found at 6,000 square feet. Only Ted Adcock is smaller, and those with licensed childcare are just much larger. They also include, in addition to childcare, all of the features that we have programmed in to this facility that we proposed. From our previous surveys, the most popular features in a CRC would be a crafts room, a large multipurpose room, and a fitness room, any of which could be used as event space. Our benchmarking with Pacifica and Half Moon Bay rec directors reinforce that those are the rooms that are most used often for recreation programming, and it's important to keep them flexible. We added a small meeting room, which particularly during the pandemic seemed to be very popular at other CRCs that we visited. And so these really were the minimal spaces, and we didn't think that we could compromise public use of those spaces or a really dedicated space for a licensed preschool. The sites that have, the CRCs that have a licensed preschool have their preschool rooms in addition to these rooms. I want to touch on the survey because Dawn is going to cover it, but not so much the write-ins. We did have a survey in December. There was a fairly good social media campaign to support the Child Care Center and write that in. About 130 people did write in the comments requesting inclusion of child care facilities out of about 500. It still is a robust percentage. We know that there is an underserved capacity right now in childcare. That is a problem that needs to be addressed on the coast. It just is one that we don't believe that we can address here without significantly compromising the CRC for the whole community. The surveys are important. I just want to say a survey is important for informing us, but it's not a vote. We take the survey information and we have to take that into account, along with the size of the space that we have to work with, the funding that we have to work with, the zoning we have to work with, and our overall authority, which is just recreation. I'm just putting this picture back up. Don has new and better pictures. This is what we showed in October. Just to point out again, small size. These are not large rooms, but I just want to touch on, we're planning 2 buildings, renovating the old building and then building a new building. It's easier for construction to do it that way, a little cheaper for construction to keep the 2 buildings separate. But now that we have done cost estimates, it's even more compelling to keep them separate. We thought this might cost 2 to 3 times what we paid for the property. It's actually, with the escalation in construction costs and inflation and so on, more multiples than that. So looking at financing, which is really our next step, we do have property tax revenue of about $850,000 a year, but we will likely have to finance construction, and it's likely we may have to do that in phases, which means the first phase may just be to renovate the existing 2,800 square foot building, which would just include 2 medium-sized community rooms, a small conference room, public restrooms, and our office, which would be a teeny tiny community recreation center. But given that there is no other public community space in the unincorporated Mid-Coast, it at least would be something. And then later, and as we acquire more funding, construct the additional community room with storage, catering, kitchen, and additional restrooms. So in that scenario, which is likely, we are not even quite meeting the basic community needs in a typical CRC with the first phase of construction. And so our conclusion still is that we just don't have space to add a small, what was termed a small preschool or childcare facility, but there's really no such thing as small. No matter what size your community center, the childcare facility has to have 35 square feet of indoor space per child and 75 square feet of outdoor play space per child. And that's what we don't have room for. So we acquired the property for the purpose of creating a CRC within our recreation, sewers, and trash authority. And we just concluded that we can't fit the facility in the 6,000 square foot CRC as proposed, or even a smaller 2,800 square foot CRC if phased, without unacceptable compromise to our mandate to provide recreation facilities and programming for the whole community. And I know that is quite disappointing for the people who depend on the childcare and preschool for the care of their family and quality of life on the coast. It is an issue on the coast. We are doing what we can with extending the lease for as long as we can until we get to the point of construction. To Picasso Preschool, we have offered all of the indoor and outdoor furnishings to go with the preschool if Candace finds a new facility for it, which we certainly hope she does, and we will do whatever we can to make such a move as flexible and easy as we can. Let's stop sharing so that I can see more of the screen. And first, I'm going to open up to the board for any questions from the board before we go to public comments. See Jen's hand up?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. First, I just want to say thank you for the thoughtfulness and the work that you've done to respond to the questions from the October meeting. I just wanted to make a couple of comments quickly. By the time I joined the board, right, we were fairly down a specific path, but I've since joined the subcommittee and been able to work with Nancy and the PMT to understand what's at hand here. And, you know, based on the research that Nancy's done and the counsel that we've received, it's not clear that there's an alternative option that we can choose other than the recommendation. But what I wanted to say this evening was, you know, that over the last few weeks, I think that things on the coast that have happened have made it abundantly clear that there are massive inequities here. And I feel like this issue for pre-K, TK is no different. And we need a solution that really considers all of the families on the coast, not the few that can afford to pay for services for their children. And so with that thinking, I actually asked Ray Muller to join us this evening because it's my hope that, given what we talked about in the extension of the lease for Picasso through 2024, that would give a little runway to Ray to be able to find a solution for the coast side that truly is a more equitable and sustainable solution. And if it's okay, Nancy, I know that normally we'd go to the other board members, but Ray is on and he has to attend an event in honor of the farm workers that were victims in Half Moon Bay. And so I'd love to be able to just have him say a few things before he goes, if that's okay.
That would be for our fellow elected official and who has to go to something really important. We're not opening up public comments yet, but oops, I thought I had Ray on.
You have me. I'm here. So I appreciate all of you making some time for me, and I would just say that to everyone watching and to you all, I understand that we have an issue that the county needs to step in to help address, and my office will do everything we can to address it. I need as much runway as you can give me. We have a lot of work that we're doing on the coast right now, but I see the direction that this board is headed in the work that's been done, and also understand it's been explained to me the constraints that you all have. So just as much runway as you can give me to find a solution for this, but I am committed to finding a solution for it. So it has to happen. I think I commented before to you all that the area in which y'all live ranks in the top 7 in terms of the expense of childcare in the Bay Area. And to the point that Jen is making, we need to find a solution, and not just for those who can afford it, for everyone. And so I'm here tonight to tell you the county is committed to finding that solution, and I am as well. But I need some runway. So as much runway as you can give me. So thank you all.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Really appreciate you joining us. I'm going to come back to the board, to Matthew.
Oh, I just wanted to note that it was on a couple of your graphics, but it wasn't mentioned that the building that we're talking about will also then contain the district offices. So we will have a coordinated effort in this building that will help the district run more efficiently. And we will be saving at least $50,000 a year on rent. And I think that's important. And that's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. And Jill?
Thank you. This is the time for questions, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is Ray still on? No?
I can't see that far down the list.
Okay, never mind. Okay. Just a few background questions. So I understand you talked to Highlands Rec. Who did you talk to there?
I visited Highlands Rec. It was more like a walkthrough. I visited to see, that was one of my very early ones. I wanted to see their layout and how they laid out childcare versus public space.
Okay, but you didn't talk to anyone there?
I did talk to somebody on the phone, but it was probably close to a year ago. I don't remember who it was. That's how I knew it was 3.5 acres. That's where I got that information.
Okay. I heard that we received $300,000 of ERAF money. Is that true?
We currently, the district receives about $300,000 of ERAF money. It varies. And right now it's actually on the sewer side of the budget rather than on the Parks and Rec side of the budget, but we could put it either place.
What can you explain? I'm not familiar with ERAF. Can you explain what that is?
Chuck was here because this is when he usually starts laughing. There is a formula after all of the property tax is collected and distributed to schools, where by some arcane algorithm, it's viewed that there is an excess. That excess is distributed to special districts such as ours. And most of the special districts get this ERAF. And Bill, you might be able to say what ERAF stands for.
Go ahead, Barbara. You wanted to say something?
It is something that we do get. There was an effort last year to pull it back. So all the special districts were in danger of losing it related to some legislation last year, which didn't pass. So we view it as something that we enjoy, but it's metastable. Bill, you go ahead. I'm sorry. I asked you.
Barbara, you're muted. I'm happy to answer question. It stands for Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund. So everyone just knows it as ERAF because that's a mouthful.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bill, can you say that one more time, a little slower?
Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund.
Got it. Thank you.
So, just so we're clear, this is a mechanism by which the state legislature shifted money from cities, counties, and special districts to education. So the fact that we're getting money back it's not the same as taking money, education money. I just want to be clear about that.
Okay, so it's money that was taken to go towards schools, but it was in excess, so now it's going back.
Correct.
Okay. Great. So one other question I have is, originally in the October meeting, the center was called a community center, but now it's being called something else. So why? Why is it? And what is it? What is it? And why is it being called all different names?
It's a community. It went from community center to community recreation center. Because as we went through what our authorities are, we just thought that would make it more clear, because our authority is for recreation. And so we just decided we needed to make sure that was clear in the name.
Can you explain what that means, our authority?
Under our special district is governed by California state law and certified by the Local Agency Formation Commission. And the Local Agency Formation Commission sanctions what you are allowed to have in your special district. Special districts can include all kinds of stuff, from police to trash to recreation and other things. On the list of things a special district can include, what we are approved to include is sewers, trash, and recreation, specifically to acquire, construct, and program recreation facilities.
Okay. In the original GCSD LAFCO application, was what you're just referring to, the GCSD proposed to partner with Cabrillo School District to improve ball fields, to partner with the county to provide parks rec opportunities at Quarry Park and Murata Surf, to provide neighborhood parks on the El Granada Avenues, and to provide passive park improvements on the Burnham Strip. Can you tell me what of those that we have achieved? Have we achieved any of those?
The medians, we achieved a use permit with the county to do recreation amenities on the medians, which we ultimately terminated because of local resident objections to that, mainly because the county considers those to be easements with the underlying land owned by the adjacent residents, and the adjacent residents objected to anything that might increase their liability on those spaces. The one thing that we have achieved is we did co-sponsor the pump track in Quarry Park. with about $100,000 of our money going toward it and lots of lobbying. I don't know what we did look. We had asked as we last fall, we looked at the CUSD property in El Granada and proposed to CUSD that since it is an unused property, we could develop it for a disc golf course, which is also another thing that was popular from our folks. CUSD ultimately decided that they didn't want to do an MOU on the property. So there have been lots of exploration. The Parks Advisory Committee has also, from 2018, tried each summer to develop recreation programming just to have a little bit more local, but with no venues, it's been just about impossible to do anything other than the history and nature walks that we have sponsored.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Another question is that I know it was a long process to become a community services district. And Bill called me and walked me through it. But I think it'd be nice for the public to know how long it took and, the election and all the ins and outs that it took to get that. And I would also like to know, well, what if we amend it? Can we amend it and just add on childcare or add on a community center or add on anything we want, really? But Bill, can you speak to that of what the process would be if we tried to amend it?
Well, you would have to go back to the local agency formation commission to get approval to add that additional power to the CSD's current powers. So that's a process, an application process to LAFCO, and they would review it and make a decision on it. And it's not a simple, it's not a simple process. It can be a lengthy process. And the question of funding will come up, how it would be funded, et cetera. So it's not a simple 3 or 6 month process. It's not even a year-long process. It's much longer than that. So it can be lengthy. And ultimately, it's this board's decision as to whether it wants to make such an application.
I think I said on my title slide, it took about 7 years from the beginning of the idea to actually achieving the CSD designation.
I just wonder if it would take as long because we wouldn't be becoming a community services district. We would be amending our existing agreement with LAFCO. What do you think, Bill?
Well, I don't want to prognosticate about, how LAFCO is going to would view it. But, it wasn't so much that we were already a sanitary district that had the power concerning sewer and water. Sewer and garbage. And so those powers were not changing. We were really adding parks to our powers. And so there was a lot of discussion about, the ability to provide the service and what overlap there was with any other jurisdictions, et cetera. So that was part of that process. And it does take quite a bit of time to go through it. Whether it would take 7 years or not, I don't know. You may be right. It may be shorter, but again, it still would be a lengthy process.
I wonder if we're deviating from our original LAFCO application with the rec center because it wasn't in our application. We didn't have anything about a community center, or everything was passive and outdoor, and it's very confusing to me. But I'll just leave it there. What if we merged the properties, the strip and the preschool property? Couldn't we build a bigger building if we had a bigger property?
And a lot more money. One of the reasons one of the concerns why we tucked the new building behind the old building is that the zoning, the El Granada Gateway zoning focuses on low development and preserving views. It's also in the local coastal zone for the county, and the local coastal plan also calls for preserving views. So part of the positioning of the building was to preserve the existing sight lines from the neighborhood. But it's probably going to take us many years to build even 6,000 square feet, frankly.
Mm-hmm. But Bill, do you know if we merge the properties, would that allow us to build a larger footprint?
I would have to look at, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you tonight. I'd have to look at the zoning for each of the different parcels and get into the weeds a little bit, but I don't want to say one way or another right now.
Okay.
But again, I don't think the size of the building is as instructive as, sort of what our main powers and focus is, which is recreation currently.
Okay. I have monopolized the conversation and I'm going to stop and let other people speak. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jill. Barbara?
I just wanted to answer that question. We are planning to merge the parcels, but the view impacts of an expanded building are what are really a problem. It's one of the main requirements of the Coastal Act and so forth is that we not block views, and expanding the building would do that.
So we're merging with the immediately adjacent parcel in order to get a big enough parcel to do 6,000.
All our parcels are going to merge because we're going to put the whole application in together.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Not, I'm going to open up for attendees to ask questions. I have first on the list is Pat Tierney. Go ahead and unmute, Pat.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening. As you know, I've been on the Parks Advisory Committee for many years, and I taught a park design and management class at San Francisco State University for many years. I feel that the direction that the community center proposal takes is right on target for a community this size. That parcel, at least the Burnham Strip, has been targeted by the community and by the district for many years as our prime recreation property. And the community center fits into that direction very, very well. It is appropriately sized. It has multi-purpose rooms that maximize the flexibility of the organization to provide a variety of services to the community. What community doesn't have, what real community does not have a community center? Everyone does a community recreation center. It's ubiquitous. So I want to support the direction that you're taking, that you're moving forward with this. Strongly support it. And I really don't think we want to get into other issues to delay it even further. You've done your homework. You've gone through the regulatory process to this stage. I think you should move forward as quickly as you can with public comments and opportunities to discuss it. But you have a great proposal. It's appropriate. It's needed. The community has again and again, the majority of the community again and again has supported a recreation component there on the Burnham Strip area. in terms of the park, as well as a community center. The surveys you've done show strong support for a community center. So just wanted to, congratulate you on moving forward to this stage, and I strongly support what you're doing. And if I can help, I'll be happy to.
Thank you, Pat. I'm going to go next to Matt Leduc. I said that correctly. Sorry, Matt, I'm new at this. You just need to unmute, Matt. There you go.
All right, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think just first, thanks. I think a lot of people have mentioned the costs are incredibly high. It's pretty unprecedented. You've all mentioned building costs, labor costs. I do have some sympathy for the community district. You bought the building. I have a lot more sympathy for the preschool. Picasso's been caught between a rock and a hard place in a difficult transaction. It's obvious that there's a want for a community center. I hope it's more obvious that there's a need for preschool, that we need childcare. We need that childcare to be equitable. I agree with that too. You all do have a choice. You are stuck in a rock and a hard place in that you bought this building and you have plans for it. But I believe that the last few years have been unprecedented. I think Mr. Mueller also illustrated that things take time. I think that time and that runway that he illustrated is really quite necessary in this case, and that the preschool does need time, especially considering what has occurred the last few years. I think you guys have extended the lease, but it's, our community needs a preschool. And I think the previous gentleman said that every community worth of salt has a community center. I would venture to guess that every community worth of salt has a preschool too. And if I had to prioritize one, kids versus a community center, it's really not a difficult choice, especially when you consider an unfathomable lack of childcare. So I just, I agree with Mr. Mueller, and I agree that runway is necessary. I think that you guys have extended the lease. I think it needs to continue to happen, especially in consideration of the unprecedented times. I think that we do need ultimately both, but if you had to put one in front of the other, I can't see how any community worth its salt wouldn't pick the young kids and having ability to access that education in that community. It's just really important. So I hope you honor the runway request. I hope you give them some more time. They need it. The community needs it. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to go on to John.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Live in El Granada, been here for 2 years. Nancy, when you said that specifically you've done all you can with Picasso to figure out a path forward, I'd like to know exactly what you've done.
I was referring to the extending the lease, the offer of the furnishings. That's the main things we can do, and any flexibility that Candace would need to facilitate a transition within our public powers. We will do what we can.
Okay. Sure. Do you have that documented somewhere?
The lease is documented, and actually
your efforts to do this. Honestly, do you have it documented?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Do we have documented?
What you said, I've done everything to figure out a preschool situation for El Granada, and I've done everything with Candace. I'm very curious what your efforts are.
I think what I said was we have done what we can with Picasso to support them while we are planning. I don't think I was said anything more general than specifically supporting Picasso with the lease and furnishings.
Okay. Second question is, what is your plan for a preschool in El Granada if we don't have one?
As a district, we don't have a plan because it's not within our powers to have that plan.
Well, it's a non-plan.
Yeah, it's not in our scope to make that plan. We will work with Supervisor Mueller if there are ways he thinks we can help. I personally called as soon as we made this acquisition, the executive director of Coastside Children's Program to give them a heads up that over time, the preschool capacity at Picasso could go to see if with planning time, they could expand. And I know.
Yeah, you're talking about stuff that's going to happen in the future. Like you don't have a plan. So you're just.
We don't have a plan for the preschool. No, that's the answer to your question.
Okay. Just want to make that clear that 50 families will not have a preschool.
Unless she finds a new location.
Oh, well, sure. Forcing someone out of their own home, their business that they've developed. So what you're saying is we want to build a recreation center. Oh, sorry, it's a non-recreation center as far as I can tell, for 50 families that you want to just kick out and say, no, we're not doing it.
I understand your view, John, but that is, oops, I'm so sorry.
Okay. That's the end of my question.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Chris. You can unmute Chris. Chris, I think you're on. You look like you're unmuted. I know you're in a different time zone. Can you hear me?
You might be double muted on your device, maybe, Chris.
No, we can't hear you, Chris. Just keep your hand up. We can't hear you, but so check your device, but I'll move on and unmute Amanda while you're sorting that out.
Hi, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Amanda.
Okay, hi. I really appreciate all of you taking public comments. Also that there's a lot that goes into the work that you're doing that I do not know about. So I'm just straight here for the preschool. So my daughter actually will be in TK next year. So I'm not here because my kid needs preschool next year. I'm here because it was a recent experience of the dire need of preschool. We're all clear on that. What I'm not super clear on is I was actually shocked when I read the one little bit of the recent survey data that you shared, which was that 130 of the 496 respondents wrote in a request for childcare. And so that wasn't even a survey option. It was just people writing it in. So the rest of the options that people were given, they weren't putting in contrast with the option of childcare. They were just saying, if you're telling me these are options, like, yeah, I like X, Y, or Z. So I think that speaks highly to the desires of the community. And I also really hear a path forward. So I understand there are challenges, huge financial challenges, but it sounds like there's a lot of will to figure out how we can both have a recreation center, which a lot of people want, and also include a preschool in the long run. And the licensing we know really matters. So in order to run a childcare facility, you have to be licensed in order for parents to be able to make use of that throughout the course of their workday. And it seems like there's some possibility with the county in terms of the funding that they could bring to the table. So just my request is that you think about the phases of this recreation center and how you could keep a possibility of a preschool on the table as you move forward, because it sounds like it could work to me. I wish that there had been a little bit more shared about the survey results, because and maybe I missed it because I'm not actually on your email list, but that one little bit about the most recent survey and how many people wrote in about childcare, I didn't see the rest of the results. So a request for that information if I missed it.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. Actually, Dawn is presenting next. We'll present the rest of the survey results. Okay. And we will post it on our website as well.
Thank you.
Chris, can you try to unmute again?
How about now?
Yes, we've got you.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Chris Johnson, I'm a resident of El Granada. I'm speaking as a private citizen and not as a representative of any of the boards or organizations I currently belong to. I support the idea of a community center. I have for 20 years. And for the last 10 years that GCSD has been a community services district. It is much needed in this community. And I do believe that there is a kind of a false choice being set up here. It is not the responsibility of the GCSD to provide childcare or preschool services for the community. That I hope that there is. I raised a child in this community who went to preschool in 3 different preschools for various reasons, and I understand the difficulties of that. But GCSD is not trying to force out Picasso. Okay, this is an unfortunate situation, but the positive here is that GCSD is trying to do something that people that have lived here for a long time have been asking for and what is needed, which is a community center where activities can take place, including after-school activities for children, activities for seniors, meetings for the community, and other things like that. There's a whole list of things that you, Nancy, presented earlier. This is a need that has been known for the community for a long time. And it shouldn't be a pitched battle between preschool childcare and a community recreation center. This is a need that has been identified for a long time. And in my opinion, GCSD has done due diligence, they've done benchmarking, and they've done a good faith public outreach. And I'm ready to move. I would like them to move forward on this for something that the community needs and has wanted for a long time. Somebody earlier said a community worth its salt would have preschool childcare. I agree. There are those things on the mid-coast, on the coast side, maybe not in El Granada. I don't think there's one in Princeton. I don't think there's one in Miramar, but there are those facilities on the coast side. There is not a community recreation center of any kind on the mid-coast. I always make this pitch, but I've been to all 50, I've driven to 49 of the 50 states and been to all 50 of them. I drove to Alaska and back last summer. And every community I went through, I mean, okay, I don't know if I documented everyone, but from large to small, to communities of a few hundred people, they had community centers for the types of things that we need a community center for. And I hope that GCSD can move forward with this. And it does not mean, it's not a zero-sum game. I am not saying to then preclude preschool or childcare. It is not in the directive of GCSD to have a plan for a preschool or childcare. But it is in their plan to provide recreational services and facilities, in my opinion. I voted for it. And I hope that it can move forward without too much delay, because another pitch I make is I've been asking for these kinds of things since my child was born. My child is now 15. Yes, we have a pump track. And it's not for lack of effort. And so I just hope that this will move forward. Thank you for listening, and I hope that the board can move forward with this and get us a community center that we desperately need. Thank you, Nancy.
All right, thank you, Chris. Fran, go ahead and unmute.
Hi. Yes. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Fran Pollard. And I just wanted to say that, yes, I and Lenny Schultz and I worked not 7 years, 14 years to become a community services district. It took 14 years. LAFCO is a statewide organization. Every county has a LAFCO. And we had to go to meetings constantly over the hill, begging. It failed the first several times that we tried, and we had to keep going. We didn't give up, and finally we were able to convince them that we just needed a park district. That's all. They did not want us to have any other service, and that's why it can only be recreation. And then we spent several months, I guess it was, because we started this when I was on the district in the year 2000, and we finally became the community service district in 2014. So that's 14 years. And that's when we sat down and organized the Granada Parks District to create the CSD. And that took another year of planning and working and meetings and the community coming together. And yes, we got a substantial vote for that, over 60%. And so we finally became a community services district. And that was all LAFCO was willing to allow us. If we got any other services, it would be another step towards becoming a city, and that they were absolutely against. So that's really part of the equation. So I do support the community center. I'm sorry for that, you know, the childcare, but that's a private business, and that does not coincide with recreation. The community center is for the whole community. The gentleman earlier said 50 people are, well, 50 people maybe can bond together and buy another building, a house, someplace, and create your business yourselves. Or maybe the school district has a room. I don't know. But anyway, I mean, those are some ideas. I don't know if they've been tried or not. But the community center, yeah, it took many, many years and many decades even to save the Burnham Strip to become a park in the first place, because there were many, many people who wanted to develop the whole strip. Now that was another issue. So I just want to say I agree with the plan. I was hoping to see a drawing of the building.
That's the next presentation, Fran.
Oh, okay. So, well, that's just what I want to say. It took many, many years, many efforts, long meetings and trials, and this was like Chris said, it's something that the whole community can use, from childhood to senior center, senior citizens, and everybody can enjoy the community center. So that's 6,000 or 7,000 people in this community, not just 50 that want to run a business in it. So so that's it. Yes, like Chris said, we can't pin one service against the other. They're two distinct, different things. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Fran.
agree with it.
Okay. Thanks, Fran. I'm going to now open up Veronica. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Veronica Vostenak, and I'm an El Granada resident for the past 10 years. I really appreciate the opportunity to comment and for you all putting this on the agenda today. I would like to advocate for programming and space for small children in the community center. Maybe that's a comment for the next presentation. But I did also want to reiterate that childcare really is a dire need on the coast. And it feels like the impacts of a community services district removing this resource has been seriously discounted. I do want to give credit both to Director Grant for her creative thinking and for Director Randall's comments and her commitment to equity for all families. I also appreciate that she engaged Supervisor Mueller and invited him to this meeting today. And I appreciate his commitment to finding a solution. After hearing the presentation and all of these comments today, I think reflecting on that, I would like to suggest that the board commits to continuing to extend the lease for the preschool until a new location for the preschool is found or other childcare facilities on the coast have opened. I think you have an opportunity here to do both the community center, but not take away a really important resource. You're a special district, you're a public agency, and I think that that's a really important thing to consider, that you're not taking that resource away. I really appreciate the work that you're all doing. I know it's not easy to be on this board, hear all these comments and make these decisions. So thank you so much for hearing us all tonight.
Thank you, Veronica. I'm going to call Jane. Go ahead and unmute.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll keep my comments very short. I just want to speak to support the community center. I think a community center can create the kind of liaisons and friendships that will bring our community together in ways that are almost invisible. And people can't always get to a doctor's appointment or other things, or just working cooperatively on an environmental project. But the other thing that came to mind when we had the storms is that it could serve as an emergency place where people can go and see if they're separated from family members. They need to recharge their phones. If their well is out of water, they need water. If we have an earthquake, it could be a communications hub for an emergency. The last I heard, CERT was considering the lot in front of the Japanese restaurant. And I know that corner is going to be very difficult if we have an emergency. There's going to be RVs trying to come out of there. People are going to be trying to get horse trailers over to the harbor. That's going to be a very congested area. So I think having it slightly separate from that corner would be great. I wanted to make one comment about the childcare in support of the parents about the childcare. I was an art teacher. I think with kids, need a very enriched environment, gardens, playgrounds, libraries, places to run. And I was very interested in hearing that Farallon View had managed to have a preschool in their school, if that's correct. But my other concern about mixing a community center with a preschool is safety. A community center is a place where anybody can come in and out. And normally when you have children, you separate them. If you step foot on an elementary school, you're asked to check in. And if you're not familiar, they ask you who you are. I think it would be very difficult to do that in a community center. But I totally support the parents. I would recommend they might talk to the Harbor District, who's going through some redesign, that maybe they could encourage a childcare center there. Hopefully the schools could accommodate them. And my last comment is about the parking, the lot next to the post office. I hear that you're out of money, but 8 years ago, there were 400 signatures hoping that we could get that lot. My thoughts, if you're short on money, is we could have an amphitheater there with acoustical concerts, wildlife presentations. Somebody brings in an owl and tells the kids about it, cultural presentations. But I hope that you keep that open. And if you don't have money, then I will personally call Neil Young and ask him for a donation. But thank you for listening, and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Jane. It's good to know what kind of connections you have. I'm going to go on to Kate. Go ahead and unmute Kate. Sorry, Kate, there you are. You just need to unmute. I think you're still muted. I don't think I can unmute you.
Can you hear me?
There, now we can hear you.
Okay, apologies. I'm very sick. I have a very terrible flu, so if I sound terrible, that's why. First thing for the agenda today, Delia, it had an option for people to click on join the Zoom meeting. And when you click on that portion, it brought you to the wrong Zoom. If you clicked on the HTTP address below it, it brought you to the right meeting. So your agenda had an error there. That's why there were so many people in the wrong meeting.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, that should be fixed. There were still people there just a few minutes ago. People are going in and out. And I think a lot of community members probably missed tonight's meeting because of that error.
Apologies.
Okay, sorry. I'm just gathering my thoughts here. Okay. I think that ultimately there's a path forward to have a community center to include a preschool. I don't think anyone here is advocating for a preschool over a community center. They're simply just asking for a preschool to be included. I agree with Jen Randall and Ray Mueller on finding an equitable preschool option that needs to be found before you and eliminate one that is so badly needed in this community. Jill Grant, I strongly support your creative thinking, and I seriously hope that you drive down all these proposed options for using that additional funding or engaging your council to find other options of combining the lots and still adhering to the Coastal Commission building guidelines. My main concern is, what was the point of the survey if you were going to ignore the survey results? 130 people wrote in that we need a preschool. Were you just doing the survey for funsies? Come on, this is so silly. This is so silly. This is a lot of people. Like, I'm not, and I've said this before, I've had friends who've chosen not to move here because there's no childcare options. I've had lots of friends leave. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I had to start getting on wait lists. I'm still on multiple wait lists for her. She's nearly 2.5. This is just, you cannot, as an elected official board, eliminate a community need that is so dire and just jump back into, what is your rationale again? It says, I don't know how many times I heard this tonight. You keep saying it's not in your powers or your responsibility to have a preschool, but is it in your powers and your responsibility to eliminate one that's so desperately needed? This is too much. Shame on you guys. That's it.
Thank you, Kate. To go to Taylor. Sorry, Taylor, let me get you in there.
Hi,
go ahead.
Okay, actually it's not Taylor, it's his wife, Sheridan, but I was breastfeeding when I asked him to join the meeting, so it's on his computer. So this is Sheridan Matthews, not Taylor Matthews. Sorry for the confusion. Veronica basically stole the words out of my mouth that I was going to say. And I wanted to echo what Matt and Amanda had asked for, which is considering the time needed, the runway needed, thinking about whether this project could be phased, where another solution is available. And then you guys start on building out the community center, because that is the problem. I know that you don't see it as your responsibility, and it is not your responsibility to create a licensed childcare facility within the scope of the work that you do, but you cannot separate yourself so much from the fact that you are displacing a preschool here. The building was bought. It is a preschool currently. It is serving a number of families in early childhood education. And that is something that is so incredibly important to our community, to the future of the people who live in this community, the children that are being educated there. And, you know, I know that I hate to call it an excuse, but it is a handy excuse. Oh, this isn't under our purview. But the fact that you purchased a building where a preschool exists makes it part of your responsibility. It is you who are displacing a preschool, and you need to understand that. And I'm not saying cancel the community center. You know, I read through the very long agenda with all of the reasons why you can't have a licensed childcare facility there, and fair. Okay. If you guys did all the legwork we asked you to do in October and you found out it cannot be done, I'll believe that. I'll buy that. But what you can do and what is under your purview is to allow for that phasing, allow for that runway, start having conversations with CCP and see if with the great, you know, construction and project they're doing in Granada Elementary School, can they make room for preschool facilities there? And then once we have a solid plan for an early childhood education facility where all these displaced families can go, then construction on the community center can start. And I know it pushes off this project that you guys have been working on for so long, and I don't undermine the frustration that comes with that. I understand how frustrating that would be, but I think you need to look at the survey results, listen to the people on the phone, think back to, for those of you who have children, how important those early years were for your children and getting education and being fostered in the way that our children are being fostered right now at Picasso Preschool, and think about what a hardship you are placing on the families on the coast. And there are a lot of families here by removing those much needed slots for preschool. So I just wholeheartedly ask you to listen to what we're asking for. And we're not saying do the impossible here. We're asking, is it possible to phase this so an alternative solution can be found, and the building and the beloved preschool that you're displacing, those families, those children have a place to go by the time you break ground on this construction project. And that's all I'm asking.
Thank you, Sheridan. Just to respond to one thing, when we bought the facility, I did contact a board member and the exec director of CCP just to let them know that that capacity was at risk, and hoping that with runway of the time that we're going through, that they also could find ways to expand. It should be great if they could expand at El Granada School. I'm going to move on to Dan Haggerty. You can unmute, Dan.
Yes, thank you. So you're asking tonight to approve the this plan, yet you've only shown us a plan view of the building. There's no elevation, there's no perspectives.
We'll have that in the next presentation, Dan. Sorry.
Well, why is this? I have to say that this meeting is very unpublic. I'm not able to see who else is in the room. You know, it's not like going into a normal public meeting where you know who's around. You know, I'm just really. Why is it out of order? Why aren't you able to give you know, more information on what you're proposing? And just this, you know, you got 126 pages on this agenda. What is that about? I can't read every page. It's almost like you're intentionally making it, you know, flooding, making it hard to find out the information that we're really seeking. And why would the perspectives and the elevation, why would it be in a different section? Why isn't it here now? Why didn't you put it in the original presentation?
It's just a choice, Dan. We had a very long conversation in October. So the first presentation was really following up on that conversation specifically about the question of including a licensed childcare center. The second is for the boards that would end in a proposal to move at least the proposed design at this stage into CEQA. So that will have more of the updated pictures and elevations, that next presentation.
Yeah, okay. Well, it seems out of order that you should give as much information that's available up front. So I guess I'll wait for that's going to be tonight, next presentation tonight?
Yes.
Okay, well, I just want to make the comment that it kind of adds confusion and it's not as efficient for all the people that are on this meeting tonight. So, it doesn't, I don't feel like you're respecting the time of the individual community members in this process, but I'll stop there.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I don't see any more hands up on the attendees. Any more questions or comments from the board before we move to Dawn? Jen?
Sorry. Yeah, I just have one. So this notion of a runway, as it's been talked about this evening and we've talked about previously with the extension of the lease, what is our capacity to consider a runway with flexibility for Picasso? Like how, I know we have it till May of 2024, or excuse me, August of 2024. Beyond that, what is our ability to extend?
I didn't think it's fixed. Some of the counsel that we've had is that it shouldn't be indefinite, but we have also said that if our timeline on planning, I think our logic was we would continue the lease because otherwise the building would sit empty, and there's some advantages to the district for continuing the lease, but we don't. It's hard to predict, when permits will be issued and when that whole process is done, so that we would take it as our timeline for construction becomes more clear. We'll consider flexibility as that becomes more clear. I think that's what we said at the last meeting. Not the last meeting, but one of the prior meetings, September. Barbara, did you have questions?
Yes. Well, I want to say once again, I wish it hadn't happened the way it did. It's very difficult. The point I want to make now is that if we approve this concept tonight for submittal to the county, we're not committing to any specific timeline. There will be time for a runway. And I know I, among many others, had talked to Supervisor Mueller early in this process to try to get some help to find some alternatives for people, because I really do understand what a critical need this is. But again, I want to say we're going to hear a proposal. If this is the community center that we eventually want, we will be merging it with the park and putting it in for a coastal development permit, a SEQRA review, and county planning. This process could take or will take a year or more, very likely, which includes many more opportunities for public comment. It doesn't set any timelines for construction. And in fact, given the financial issues involved in this and the fact that once we achieve this first milestone of kind of getting a project that we like, that is ready to go in for review, we really then have to look at the financial issues and the phasing of it. We need to come up with a number of plans. We need to start thinking about, how we're going to, putting together administration for this, a security plan for the property, just lots of things we'll have to think about. this is not coming around the corner, and we've already extended the lease of leave once. I am very, very comfortable with the notion that there will be time, and that I like Ray's phrase of a runway. And I know I have from the very beginning thought that we should work together to try to solve this problem for the community. So I'd like to see us move forward. I'm very eager, actually, to see the proposal from our terrific consultants for what we would be likely to have. And when people look at it, once again, I think this will be emphasized, but it is very likely that we will just do it in 2 phases. And it might be phase 1, then the park, then phase 2, maybe then the second part of the park. So, and you're going to see the park next month. We're going to bring that. Again, we're not approving it to start construction tomorrow. We're approving it to start the very long review process and additional public comment before we have something that we can look at funding and building to satisfy the mandates that we were given as a board. So, thank you.
Okay. And Jill?
I'm going to ask for what is the process here? So does the board get another chance to comment before we vote, or what?
Yeah, this was an information item. Next, after Dawn's presentation, we will have another comment session before we vote on a motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I see that actually hands going up on the attendees. We already closed the public comments on the last presentation. Given the time, I do want to move on and have Dawn show us her presentation. We'll have a comment opportunity after Dawn's presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, great. Let me just share my screen here. Just 1 minute, sorry. Okay. Well, my name is Dawn Merkus, and I'm a principal of Group 4 Architecture and have been working with the district, as Nancy mentioned, since last August. And just to quickly go over the agenda that I want to share with you tonight for our presentation is to give you a quick update on our work plan, give you a summary of the community engagement that we did conduct in December, and then most importantly, give you an update on the conceptual design presentation. I think it is slated, as Nancy mentioned, then to take the board questions, return to public comment, and the proposed action tonight is for the board to approve conceptual design, basically for us to move ahead into schematic design so that we can produce the documents that need to go along with the CEQA application for the project. And so where we are right now is actually about a couple weeks behind schedule. I think we've been trying to get this scheduled with the board, just completing conceptual design, which then once given the okay from the board, we'll go and complete our schematic design, which is just early, really design documentation enough to define the project so that it can fulfill the initial study and the project descriptions that's required for the CEQA process. As been talked about tonight, we did conduct a survey in December and we were thrilled. 536 participants is fabulous for a community of this size. On a rainy December day, we actually had about 40 people join us out by the post office, and we got rather wet, but had very engaging discussions pretty much busy from the time we opened up until we closed up about 1 o'clock that day. In addition to that, while the online survey was up, we had 496 participants. Of that, 355 were GCSD residents, and the other 141 were COSI residents. So a great turnout. And just to summarize what we heard is, let me just move this thing here. Early childhood programs did get a strong response as we expected. So of your residents, we had over 200 respondents voting for that as a priority. Exercise and yoga, creative arts, events, all had almost between 140 and 160, and then followed closely with gatherings, lifelong learning, over 100, dance, hanging out, games, digital arts, and technology. Kind of followed the chart here, as you can see. When we looked at community spaces, really nice to see in our lovely coastside that outdoor gathering was definitely one of our big vote getters at 150 or more. Fitness and wellness, very important. The community hall, the multi-purpose room, the kitchen, library, history exhibit, supporting spaces such as conference room and district offices also got some votes. We also talked about design values. One of the things we wanted to hear from the community as we started developing and finalizing the conceptual design is what was the architectural aesthetic that people would like to see at the new facility and the renovated building. As you can see, a real strong turnout for our 4 top vote getters here, from nature-inspired, sustainable, indoor, outdoor, strong preference for natural lighting, warm and inviting. Then followed with the lower votes for the canopies, trellises, welcoming entry, timeless design. I think colorful and civic were not so important to the community, and hopefully our design reflects that. For sustainable strategies, really just wanted to point out that everything we do in California right now is considered sustainable. With the new code that we're adopting for this coming year, even our standard projects are pretty much approaching a LEED silver in terms of a benchmark, which is pretty significant. And so these really are not either or, but just wanting to understand what people thought was really important and how it might be communicated in the design. And so the top vote getter was a native and drought tolerant landscape, photovoltaics or solar panels on the roof, daylight harvesting, recycled local sustainable materials, being on the coast side, right up adjacent to Surfers Beach. Wind protection, of course, is important, as we're all learning, especially in this last couple of weeks or last 4 to 5 days has been crazy. Bioswales, shades and overhangs, and EV charging. So just looking at the summary, we presented this in October, what we're looking at for the program. And this really reflects nicely all of the great input that we got in December. So before I even go into these, I just want to reiterate that all these spaces are really intended to be multi-use. Looking at a community room, a fitness room, a lobby reception area, an activity room, small meeting room, and a small commercial kitchen, catering kitchen to support the center and the different activities at the center. Looking at the community room, reflecting the design values, we heard that indoor-outdoor connections, spaces that can go from indoors to outdoors seamlessly. On our good weather's days, we really want to celebrate that. Spaces that potentially can be used for anything from lectures to dining to celebrations. Really important that we provide multi-use and flexible space in the community hall. A small meeting room, great place for after school, kids' homework sessions, or homeowners, community-based organizations, homeschoolers love to use spaces like this. Really fabulous spaces for the entire community. And then the activity room, really defined by easily cleanable surfaces, spaces for arts and crafts. You can see the image on the top right. We envision a lot of indoor-outdoor spaces in this renovated facility and the new addition. Important with 6,000 square feet, that is still really on the small side to maximize the program space. We're looking at using a lot of the outdoor space to complement the indoor space. The fitness room, definitely having it fitted out for everything from yoga to dance to jazzercise to potentially even stationary bikes and things like that. But as important as it is used for fitness, it also could be used for other activities as well. And again, that indoor-outdoor connection was seen as a really advantage at our site. So just to refresh everyone on our site analysis, what we have here is showing our site at the end of Burnham Strip, very clear and visible as you come south on Highway 1. We've also shown the wind rows that you can see are these rows that show the different wind directions at the different times of year, and is something we used when we actually did our wind modeling for the project to make sure our outdoor spaces were protected from these winds. And then you can also see how the summer sun and the winter sun go around at the different seasons and will affect the building. As we zoom in closer, you can see the park design that has been reviewed and I understand will be presented next month. The building is on the site, which is just to the left of Burnham Strip, right off of Avenue Alhambra and right across from the Beach Hotel and Sam's. Zooming in a little bit closer, you're able to kind of see how we've fit right in, and with our lovely work from our landscape architect, Tom Conroy, has been able to integrate our site really seamlessly into the planned park improvements. And it really becomes kind of this lovely terminus for the park and an anchor to the park or a gateway to the park, all depending on how you want to look at it. As mentioned earlier, one of the things that was really critical to us was to be super sensitive to the neighbors and to really be sensitive to views, view corridors, and to make sure that whatever we did was an enhancement of this site and an improvement for the overall community. We have Avenue Alhambra at the top. You can see our parking lot here, which is expanded slightly to accommodate a few additional spaces for the increased size of the building. We have EV charging stations as well as ADA spaces. We have a nice drop off right at the front entry. Along the property line to the left, we do have a little service drive that provides access for garbage delivery to the kitchen, as well as fire access for fire protection around the building. Already from this, you can see how we're aiming the building towards the views. We're using a courtyard scheme between the existing building and the new building to create protected courtyards that would be able to expand those indoor spaces to the outdoor spaces. Just starting at the top, we have our entryway that goes into our new entry to the building. Going to the right, we have the activity courtyard out off of our activity classroom. In the center, we're calling it the community living room, envisioning that being weather protected with trellises, but really having comfortable furniture in it, places for people to hang out. Then outside the fitness room, we have another fitness courtyard. And then off the community room, really taking advantage of those beautiful views to the coast, an additional patio off the community room. You've heard us talk a little bit about phasing, and the phasing is, this strategy really does lend itself super nicely to phasing. Just the reason you might phase it is one, because of funding. Another reason you might want to fund or phase it is because you actually might want to do phase 1 first and start using it while you're constructing phase 2. And then just timing of everything. So one of the phasing diagrams that we're showing right here has phase one, complete renovation of the existing building, the recreation center, and all the associated site work and outside courtyards and walkways directly adjacent to it. Also included in that phase one could be the site preparation for phase two. If you went in and you did the compaction and the site preparation for phase two, it makes construction of that phase two that much easier without having to disrupt what's already been improved in phase one. And then phase two would be the construction of the community room and the new construction portion of the building as we shown here outlined in purple. Zooming in to the floor plans, starting to show some furniture and really starting to hopefully exhibit the character of the spaces. We have the lobby, which comes off the parking lot, directly off that drop off I just described. Our staff spaces are on the left side of the screen, 2 indoor restrooms on the right, the small meeting room, directly walking out to what we're calling the outdoor living room, which is a trellis covered weather protected area between the 2 buildings, access to the activity room, which is shown over here on the right, and the fitness room, which is shown on the left, would be through a covered walkway on the outside of the building. Again, being super efficient with our space, maximizing the program use of the dollars. The rooms, as I mentioned, the fitness and the activity room and the community hall all have openings that would create that seamless indoor-outdoor connection. As we go through the outdoor living room, you can see there's a nice connection over to Burnham Park and the walking paths that go around Burnham Park, or you could go straight over to the community room, which has the catering kitchen in it, additional restroom, storage, support spaces, and then out to those lovely views is really the focus of this room with the community courtyard and the additional potential expansion of that indoor space. Here's our first rendering, looking at it from Avenue Alhambra, looking back towards the harbor, right back towards the intersection there, really creating what is a completely new building from that existing building. A significant renovation, replacing all of the envelope of the building, all of the windows, creating new insulation, really bringing the entire building up to current code requirements and the functionality of it. Again, but being a little bit conservative on this side. We don't want to make a huge, big, bold statement and come up with something that's really drastic and going to be too colorful or too iconic or too civic. A little bit understated is how I describe this elevation. But as we move around the building and look back towards the existing building on the right, looking at the building now from Burnham Park, you can see how our activity room in the existing building creates this lovely connection to the courtyard. We have the view of what we're calling the community living room on the outside of the building that people could use when the building's open or closed, and then the connection over to the new community hall. Really creating a very nice transparent pavilion, which tucks really nicely behind that existing building, which is barely even noticeable from the street or from the existing residents. And I think that completes the presentation. One more view looking back at, so this is looking from Highway 1, and you can see how the community hall is really going to be this lovely pavilion look almost. I think it really reflects those warm and inviting design values that people voted on. Some of the biggest vote getters, still very low profile, not looking at making a huge statement architecturally, a little bit more timeless in its design, natural materials, and lovely indoor, outdoor connections with great daylighting opportunities. And that, I think, I'm happy to go back and answer any questions or go back over anything.
Dawn, can you Wait, let me just make sure I can see. Okay, never mind. Okay, first from the board, any questions for Dawn?
Hi, it's Jen. But I don't know if this is for Dawn or for Nancy or Barbara, actually. But first, I mean, conceptually, the design is beautiful. I mean, obviously, it's a beautiful rendering. I have a question, though, about sequencing, not necessarily on the build of the buildings, but in relationship to the park. So if we're looking at cadencing and money spent, right, what's the timing to build the park aspect relative to the recreational center? And what's the order there and what the thought there?
I think Barbara laid it out actually on phasing and the two together. The board actually hasn't had a discussion about that.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking is just as we think about our previous discussion and thinking of runway, is there a possibility of prioritizing the park itself to even extend the runway further on the recreational center so that we give the school longer time or the county a longer runway to actually figure out another option? So we are giving sort of meeting in the middle and getting a park for the community, but then sort of deprioritizing the recreational center.
That's a discussion the board could certainly have. I think we'll learn more too as we start to get into the secret review and permitting process on whether they go in tandem or naturally separate. Jill, do you have a question? Oh, you're muted, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you, Dawn, for the presentation. Dawn, do you know the difference between a community center and a recreation center?
Honestly, I think that they are used interchangeably in our profession. And I think a lot of times it is really depending on how you want to call yourself or how you want to promote yourself between recreation and community center. From working on community centers and recreation centers for over 30 years, it's really the name people choose to go by and the programs they choose to provide.
Okay, so you're not sure, basically.
Well, I don't know that there is a black and white definition between a community center or a recreation center. We just completed one building on the peninsula that was called a recreation center previously, has pretty much the same program in it as now they're calling themselves a community center. So.
Yeah, I was just curious that if CEQA had a definition for it.
Not that I know of.
Okay, thank you.
Matthew?
Dawn, overall, I think the ideas presented here are beautiful and will really well serve the committee and community. But where is the office staff? There was one illustration that had what appeared to be an open area that was labeled staff. But we are going to need offices that you can close the door and have security and also get staff work done because we'll still be a sanitary district at the same time.
Yeah, we did do the programming with your staff in addition to the staff space. They have use of potentially the meeting room located here as well. It can be secured off from the lobby. And one of the thoughts is that, you know, with current technology, you can actually have card key access. And so if your district office is closed and you have provided a program in the fitness space, that program supervisor or whoever's providing that program would actually be able to access the building, be able to use the facility, you know, just with card key. And so it's not necessarily needs to be operated by your district staff, but it could be. It's really designed for flexibility, and the refinement in the staff spaces can certainly be done by providing closed offices or open workspace in that square footage we've shown there.
Matthew, just we had it on a previous slide, but that staff area is about 50 square feet larger than the current staff area. But the meeting room opens up from the staff area as well, so it could be swing space.
Well, it looks, see the red triangle at the top, that's the entryway, and people will be coming in, and then the curved item appears to be a welcome desk. And I don't see any enclosed.
So there is, the indication is that this is a counter that is secure here, and it potentially could be closed with a roll down door. But again, it's a conceptual design. And so the refinements in terms of the security lines and how it actually operates with that staff space, we can explore more in schematic design the next phase. But it's really the allocation of square footage of the staff space right here is that we're programmed to support the district office in addition to the use of the meeting room or the activity room or the community hall for your larger meetings, your board meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara?
Thank you, Don. I think you've done a wonderful job looking at this site and coming up with something that's really consistent with the values of our community and that would fulfill the needs that have been, except for one major one, that have been expressed by our community. I feel very comfortable with this plan to sort of send it off down the long track of the review process that doesn't, talking about Jen's comments and others' comments, that doesn't, you know, commit us to any kind of particular construction schedule. And I agree with Nancy that we're going to have some really serious looks at funding and phasing. And as you've all said, we've all talked to Ray about looking into other options for this. So I feel very comfortable that this is a design that would serve our community well. It meets many of the needs, and that it is appropriate to start it through the review process. So that's where I would like to see us go with this.
We don't have any other board questions. I will move to.
Sorry,
sorry, Jen, I didn't see you.
No, it's okay. I just threw my hand up. I'll be candid in where I'm at on this right now. I think that, you know, in theory, yes, it's a beautiful design, and I would love to say, like, you know, hey, we have all of the ability to think about the pieces of the puzzle down the road, right? As someone who's just built a home, has gone through the review process with the county, understands how sort of these things work, right? Obviously not on this scale and to this degree, but still familiar. Once we go, we're going, right? And what I feel is like we're trying to make decisions in abstract or independent of one another when these are all interrelated decisions. And so what I'm craving for is some intentionality from us as a board around what we want to do in terms of sequencing of a build process, because once we put our name in the hat and we start going and we get permitted, then we have a window of time to start building. So if we have questions about funding, if we have questions about sequencing, in what order would we do a park first versus the rec center, right? These are things that we should actually have intentionality about as a board, because we won't have a tremendous amount of time on the back end to start building. I think at least for like private builds, it's a year before your permit is up and you have to re-permit, right? You have to build within a year. So I'm a little bit apprehensive about acting as if we're just deciding on a design to put in this review process that doesn't have any knock-on implications. And so I just want to posit that here right now as to the broader board.
I agree.
Tanya, can you comment on the process?
I don't know if Bill might want to speak to that. The CEQA process is different than a building permit, Jen. So when you do get a building permit, you have a limited amount of time to do your construction because it was designed to that current code. And there's time, the clock starts a ticking, right? With CEQA, project entitlements, it is different. And maybe your council can help you with that.
Great point, Dawn. Thank you. All the board is not approving this plan tonight. The board is simply authorizing moving forward, basically with a project description to move it forward so the CEQA process can begin, environmental review can begin. That's going to be a process, and nothing in that is, this decision tonight will not bind the board in any particular manner as to whether to do this project or otherwise. So, but you have to start somewhere and you need a project description to move forward through the process. So, it's up to the board whether you want to authorize that tonight, but just to be clear, you're not authorizing this particular project and not approving this project tonight. But you're simply saying, we like this as a project description and we're going to move it forward.
Jill, did you have another comment?
I have a question. Are we doing comments or questions right now?
Which I have some people waiting for public comments. So just questions for clarification at this point.
Okay, question. But to clarify, if we do approve this tonight, it is shutting the door on childcare, correct?
Well, to answer that question, the board is authorizing this as the project description moving forward, and it doesn't include childcare. That's correct.
It does not. So we're telling Ray Mueller, no, we're not going to give you any more leeway, and telling the people the chapter's closed. I just want to.
Ray asked us for runway in terms of time.
Right. That's
so
what
we
I'm
don't have
saying.
An answer on time, but we would be saying it won't be in this site.
Okay. Dawn, a question on your map, on your schematic. It looks like there's a lot of trees and shrubs. Are those just for show, or do you actually, are those actually where trees and shrubs will go?
So the landscape plan was developed with Kikuchi, who is the landscape architect for Burnham Park and is also working on our site. And so the current location, proposed location at this conceptual design is definitely a proposal where they could potentially be located to enhance both the park as well as the activity spaces that we're defining with the outdoor areas. So they're suggested. We don't have tree types called out or anything like that at this point, but it's really the type of landscape that we're looking at. For instance, around the community room and the community yard, there's just a little bit more of a glade of trees there, creating a little bit more privacy if you're having an event in the community room to separate you from the rest of the activity going on in the outdoor living room or in the activity courtyard spaces. So yes, thought has gone into where trees are located, where shrubs are located. They're not detailed yet as to species or sizes or things like that.
So I wonder, I don't believe you've conducted a biological survey as of yet. Is that correct?
I believe that is part of the CEQA process, correct?
Okay, and so when they do that survey, they're going to tell everyone that this originally was coastal terrace prairie, and we didn't have trees here. And just by putting trees and shrubs in the design tells me you're gonna have lighting, you're gonna have maintenance, which means not by hand, you're gonna have people in there with mowers and blowers. And so that concerns me. It's a beautiful plan, but that concerns me, Don.
No, I think that's fair suggestions, and this at a conceptual design phase, and the design is perfect for us to get that comment. And definitely something as we move forward into schematic design, we'll work with the landscape architect to come back and respond to your comments and try and integrate where appropriate and have answers where there may be other suggestions. But yeah, perfect comment. Thank you.
And I'd like to also add that through the environmental review process, there may be some adjustments or changes to deal with the types of issues that you're raising. So again, this is just a project description, and what you don't want to do is freeze this in the moment, because the CEQA review will lead to potential changes and mitigations and alterations. So it's just to get the process started. It's not set in stone.
Barbara?
I just wanted to comment that I know Tom Conroy is very aware of the constraints on this property. I happened to be walking by there today, and in front of the current building is a very large coffee berry plant and a whole lot of beautiful ceanothus plants. So, I can envision some native vegetation like that could work very well there. We aren't at that point yet, but I am 100% sure that Tom is not looking at any kind of trees that would grow, first of all, taller than the view impact constraints, and also that would be appropriate for the site. As for the phasing issue, I think it's true that I think it's correct, and I would agree with Jen that we probably need to have some phasing discussions before we move forward with this. I mean, I do think it's a great design. And in response to Jill, if you look at this provides the facilities that are needed. And sadly, there's no space there for licensed daycare with the amount of space that takes. That would take most of the main building. It's what takes the entire top building now, plus a very large playground. So it's really, sadly, either or. And I'm very supportive of efforts to try to find some alternatives and, do whatever we can to help make that work. I'm in agreement that we should defer a final decision tonight. It's not a decision that would be approving this, but a decision whether to move it forward. And let's have some phasing discussions at a follow-up meeting.
We are actually just in the questions section, so let's.
I know. I'm just saying where I'm coming.
Something to add there, but I'm going to go to. We have some folks who've been waiting to comment, so I do want to go and open public comments and start with. I think that's still Sheridan. We allow Sheridan. Go ahead and unmute Sheridan.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to point out and reiterate to the previous point that many people brought up, including myself, about phasing. In the survey results, the early childhood programs, I know I selected that not thinking of it as a nature class for kids for an hour on the weekend. I thought that was the only option for advocating for having childcare space and having that licensed facility in the community center. And so that's what I selected. And I know a lot of people out there probably did the same as I did, assuming that by selecting early childhood programs, they were advocating for having a child care center in the community center. And I just don't want you guys to overlook the fact that that was the most popular option. It ranked #1 in your survey results. And so I know I kind of am getting a very strong feeling that the option for a licensed childcare facility within the community center, that ship has sailed. But I think that it is incredibly important for you guys to recognize that that was the #1 thing that your community asked for. So whatever you can do to be, I think it was Jen who said it, be very intentional about the phasing of this, planning to make sure that your community that asked for a child care solution as part of this plan, making sure that all of your community that asked for that is not being overlooked, and that you guys are very intentional in the phasing so that there is coverage for these families as you're moving ahead with these plans. So again, that means working with the community to have an alternative solution that is in place and open by the time that you guys have ended the lease for Picasso. So I just really want to make sure that you guys understand that when people selected early childhood programs, they weren't talking about, a nature hour. They were talking about a preschool. And thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Going to move on to Ryan.
Hi, everybody. Appreciate how thorough the concept is. There was an important piece to me that I didn't see in the survey areas, and that to me could be the opportunity to cover cultural programs, Native, Indigenous awareness, as Jill mentioned, the Native landscape. I think it would be great before this goes up the review chain, to have either in the landscaping or in some way mention the acknowledgement of the Ramaytush and Chiguan, the people that have been there literally underground. There are remnants of them and are still here today. Actually, Catalina Gomez is on this call as well. I think she might speak. So I wanted to just put a voice out for that. If we could maybe insert some plan or survey again before this goes into a lock. And that also goes into the Burnham Park naming, which I'm not sure I could stay on. This has been a very long meeting, but I know a few of us have a letter in progress to challenge the Burnham Park name to also represent the Native peoples of this land. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. I think we are going to have on our agenda next month discussion of the park name.
Great.
I'll move on to Lenny. Unmute, Lenny.
Hi, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for all the work. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you for all the work you've done. I just want to revisit just for a moment the landscaping design and emphasize early on here that the trees, and thank you, Jill, for your comments. Trees on these schematics can look small and insignificant, but as we can see from other developments on the coast side, when we looked at this phase of those developments, for example, the beach house, on each side, they were supposed to provide a 50% blue water view to the ocean. And you can see how those trees have completely blocked both sides of the building, of the beach house. So these trees here, I'm kind of concerned that they will block from the inside of the community room also. I'm looking at it at the end of the whole development, sitting inside the community room, and the sweeping view is so beautiful looking south over the park that we don't really want any trees at all to block views from the ocean nor the the park, the green space. So I just wanted to get that in. You know, they always say, oh, these are going to be small trees. They're not going to grow tall and blah, blah, blah. And then you can see how the front of Granada has been completely blocked off from the ocean by those cypress trees. I know these aren't cypresses, but I'm just giving that as an example. Be completely sensitive to blockage of the beautiful views all around from this community center, you know, and thank you. Thanks a lot. I like the design. I just hope that it doesn't block ocean views. You know, I'm so sensitive to that. Yeah. Not just because I live here, but I walk down the street and I want to be able to see the ocean, as Burnham designed the entire town to be that way. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lenny. Mm-hmm. Go on to Amanda. Oops, let me.
Hi, Amanda again. I'll be really fast. First of all, second what Ryan said, really appreciate native land acknowledgement and inclusion in the design of the space would be awesome. And back on the preschool quickly, when I said I see a path forward, I really would love to see a preschool as part of this plan. I think there's value to having kids and families coming to the space every day anyway, if it's something that we want to be a lively community space. So if we're not actually locked in to this plan, why not swap out one of the spaces and call it a classroom or a preschool space for now? Alternatively, my request would be, what about a secondary plan so that we get some perspective about like how much we would lose if we included a preschool. This is how much it would actually take, because I don't have that comparison to understand what we're debating. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Next, I'll get it to you, is Dan. Go ahead and unmute.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I'm looking right now at the what you would see from the perspective from Alhambra. You know, I know that a lot has been put in this, but I have to just give early comments on you know on the feel of this building fitting into the community. I don't want to be too sharp, but I gotta just say it. I gotta certainly I do like the I understand the flat roof concept, no problem there. I do like it's less on the front building and more on the back building. You know, the windows. But this perspective to me, I don't mean any disrespect at all, but it has a feeling to me. This is what I get from looking at this, like it's a side building on a corporate like campus in Cupertino. You know. El Granada has its in the history, it has kind of like a non-corporate look. The lettering, I'm sure this just threw something up there, but certainly I'm not really excited about the font lettering, and I some type of maybe a wooden sign down low. I don't think that it needs to be broadcasted. I think that the building needs more texture. I see the horizontal boards and a little bit of texture there, but I really don't like the sharp edges on the corners. I think and I understand there'll be further opportunities to comment on the design, but I just want to make sure I gave some comments early on. I love to be able to look at something and just say, hey, that is just beautifully fitting for the environment. And I can't say that with this perspective. Again, I understand the low flat roof, and we'll see how this develops, but I'm hoping certainly not to have this corporate feel on our beautiful Avenue Alhambra, and that I would drive by every day and see this. I guess I'll just have to continue to kind of give comments over the appropriate timing, but I'm actually, I wish I could just capture something that just is a little bit more representative of the total character of El Granada. I think that there's a little bit of room for improvement. I understand this is the first step, and thank you for hearing my comment.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I'm going to move on to Fran. If you want to unmute, Fran.
Okay, hi again. Yeah, I wanted to kind of agree with what Lenny said. Don't want to keep the trees not much bigger than or taller than the building, and low impact and not view blocking. So, but that'll be decided later, I'm sure. I think the first, when you showed the picture of samples of community centers several months ago when you first did this, I thought it was all glass. And so I kind of agree with Dan on the building, the picture you just had before this. Yeah, I would like to see that more glass in the front rather than that solid wood and cement, whatever it is. If that could be done so that we can see through it, if there's still some view, though I realize the other building is behind it, but I don't know if you can see through both to the ocean. So there is some kind of reflective view that I'd like to see if that's at all possible. So those were my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Fran. Kate, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I think overall there's been a general sense of bad faith with the conduction, like with the whole idea of the community survey. I second what someone said earlier about how people thought that when they were selecting early childhood programs, they thought that that was the preschool option. At least that's how I read the survey to be, especially given the fact that during the October meeting, it was said that because there was such an outcry at that meeting, that they would do an additional community survey to find out whether or not the community actually wanted a preschool in the community center. And I think that there's just been this overall bad faith action of ignoring what the community said. Overwhelmingly, people said that they wanted, early childhood programs, thinking it was likely going to be a preschool. And those that didn't and actually had the forethought to write in the option, 130 people did. And where is the rationale for ignoring all those voices? Who gave the instruction that we should ignore the most popular choice when designing this community center? Like, who on the board? This is a real question I have. I am asking this question. Who on the board directed the designer to ignore the most popular answer that was on the survey?
Kate, this is the third of 3 surveys that we've done. So we are incorporating information from all of the surveys in the community center. And
okay, but the most recent that occurred after the pandemic, with more and more people staying home and wanting to be local and not commuting over the hill, the most recent and up to date with the, that includes the most recent population of people. That was the most important, most selected answer. What is the rationale for ignoring that?
And I think we're not ignoring it. We're incorporating it with all of the other feedback that we have. But I know
really?
you have a different
I don't
view.
see anything in here that
I don't
talks
think we
about
can
a
debate it.
preschool or a childcare center. I think this is really bad faith. And I would like to see a plan that includes, what could potentially be lost if a one class preschool was included in this design, so that the community can make a real decision on two comparisons.
I understand. And remember, and if you're finished with your comments, you have to remember that it requires outdoor space as well as indoor space. And that's when it becomes really difficult.
Say that again?
It would need outdoor space as well as indoor space. It's not just
you're right next to a huge park.
Right. That may not meet the licensing requirements.
Right there. That's ridiculous. Also, I just want to also chime in and say that the land acknowledgement should be included. That's a wonderful idea. And I hope that no decision is made tonight to go forward on this plan. It completely ignores what the community wants and has expressed their views for. It's a shame that it's not being reflected here tonight. I'm done with my comment.
Thank you. Jane, go ahead. And unmute.
Okay, am I live now? Unmute.
Yes.
Okay. The original reason let me give a little bit of feedback to the design. I tend to agree with Dan. I feel like the first building is way too boxy. And I understand that the guidelines was let's have it blend in, but I think it's possible to have something architecturally beautiful, but also blend in nicely so that it isn't an eyesore. I think it just needs a little bit more personality. I really liked the rec center. I think it's open and airy and beautiful. I also, just from an aesthetic viewpoint, would hope that we'd use colors that recede, like a dark green, rather than colors that jump out. So that's the feedback on the design. I wanted to also support the naming. I know you're going to talk about that, so I'll just keep that very brief. But with all of our street names named after explorers and conquistadors, when history has really opened up for a more reflective view on the contributions of the tribal groups here and their deep knowledge of nature and culture, I think it would be a wonderful opening to have it Shiguan Park or some other name that reflects the tribal groups that were here. I think it would balance out our history. And my third comment, I just wanted to add, because we seem to be talking a lot about the functionality of the building. And I'm speaking now from the grapevine. I think it's, as a taxpayer, there were two buckets that we paid taxes into, or there are many, but two main ones I'm thinking of. One is for parks, and the other was the school bond, which was very contentious. It won by 3 votes. But we've seen, from the grapevine point of view, I'm not involved in it. The taxpayers in El Granada seem to be saying that they're seeing a lot of that money going to Hatch. And part of the grapevine feeling is that they may close El Granada if there aren't enough children. And it's such an expensive neighborhood. We have a drop in children population. And I think the taxpayers in El Granada would love to see that school maintained and the school really take into the account the needs of this community, which it's very clear that it's a preschool that needs to be implemented. So I think as a taxpayer, I'm very frustrated because the school bond was paid in hopes that school would meet the needs of the community. And I think that the parents who are feeling like, and I'm just guessing from what I'm hearing, they're fighting an uphill battle. They would have the whole community's support to say, let us see our tax dollars fix that school so it can meet the needs of the families that are here. So anyway, thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you, Jane. Candace. Oops. Candace, your hand went down. There it is. Okay, go ahead, Candace.
Hi, sorry. Oh, Shoot. Hi, sorry. I was putting my kids to bed because this has been a very long meeting.
Yes.
I agree with the name of the Burnham Strip, changing it to where it's something that's more for the land. But I will go back to the whole preschool situation, and not just because I'm the owner of the current preschool, but just because there is a huge need here on the coast for it. I keep hearing CCP. Right now, El Granada, they are expanding the school. They're not expanding, they're doing construction. They don't have room there to expand for a preschool. Not anytime soon, maybe years to come, but not anytime soon. I also heard somebody tonight mention that why doesn't the preschool just buy a house, or why can't we just go somewhere? Our zoning laws don't allow for it. If that was the case, I would have bought a house. We would have a preschool in the residential area. You can't do that. We would be in the harbor. You can't do that. Our zoning laws are very strict here. That's why 2 years ago, the community said, GCSD, please don't buy this building because there's nowhere for them to go. We're not asking, we're on board with the community center because we have to be. But you did a poll, the most recent poll, not one from 2 years ago, not one from 3 years ago, not one from 4 years ago, this year, and what the needs of the community needs, what they want now. And that was a preschool. We don't need the whole building. We're not asking for the whole building, even if it's not me, and it doesn't have to be privately owned. It could be, it could be nonprofit. The board members of the GCSD could even be on the board members for the preschool. We just want a classroom. That's all the community needs. They need somewhere for kids of El Granada, the kids of Moss Beach, to go to school. Parents need to work. Like, how do you afford the cost of living in here? You have to work. Kids need a place to go. CCP and Holy Family are the only preschools we have. It's not enough to accommodate the kids on the coast. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Candace. Sorry to keep you so late.
No, sorry. I'm very passionate. It's been very emotional just seeing this tonight and seeing, like I said, Picasso, 22 years. I'm a member of this community, 27 years. To see basically this organization, big government people come and just put a small business out of business is what's happening. When the community is asking you, like, please incorporate this into this beautiful community center that we can all use and we can all benefit from.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheridan, are you coming? Is that Sheridan coming back, or did I just miss taking your hand?
Yeah,
down?
no, that's me. Thanks. I just, with Kate's second comment, I just wanted to jump back in and kind of, I get a second what she said and almost revise my earlier comment. It's unfortunate that I came into this meeting having read through the agenda and feeling like this ship had already sailed, feeling like this decision had been made, that we're just going to build this community center without space for a classroom. Because seeing those survey results, it really is true. That was the number one demand, the number one ask from your community. And I don't think we're getting a fair shake. I do think it's a little bit shady that is what's being overlooked and completely ignored. We had this very passionate meeting in October where we got to express our feelings about this. The solution from that meeting was to say, okay, and I wasn't part of this community when the first polls went out. But from that meeting, my understanding was that a preschool or childhood programming or early education was not included on the previous two surveys. It wasn't presented as an option. So in October, we said that, and we agreed that we were going to put out a new poll to the community that was going to include early education as an option there to see if that's what the community wanted. And from the results that were shown on the screen, resoundingly, that is what people said that they wanted. And I have to agree with Kate here. It is really unfair that is completely being overlooked and not taken into consideration. And I would like to second her suggestion, which I think is a great one. Show us what it looks like. Show us two options, one without the classroom and one with the classroom and all the requirements, outdoor and indoor, that would take, and what the resulting community center would look like with that option. And I think you owe it to the community, to everyone who engaged in that survey, and again, resoundingly said, we want childcare, we want a preschool, we want early childhood education. And I think it's only fair to respond to that with, okay, this is what the option looks like. So I really wanted to kind of revise my earlier comment and then second what I think was a great suggestion from Kate, that
I'm sorry if I cut you off, Sheridan. I didn't mean to cut you off just at the end there. Are you still there?
Yeah, I was basically done. I was just saying, I think that we really do owe it to the poll results to show both options and what it looks like with and without a classroom space for children.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have no more comments. Come back to the board for discussion. I have one thing that's sort of in response to a number of those comments. When we were waiting through the process to engage our architect, I did a lot of the fact finding on what it would mean with some board members who were keen on including childcare. My view is I just don't even know what it takes. So it took, Candace answered a lot of questions from me. May Clark from CCP answered a lot of questions from me, benchmarked a number of other sites. And when we engaged the architect, we knew what those requirements were. We knew what a basic community center is, but no sense of whether it could fit or not. Group 4 Architects has built many, many community centers, and a number of those with childcare in them. With Dawn's sense of how much space stuff takes, pretty clearly with as small a site as we have and as small a building as we have, it was clear that we couldn't include, and it's not just a classroom, the play area is more than twice the space of the classroom. It has to be accessible and secure and not in use by anybody else when the preschool is in session. The playground in the park is 200 yards away, and we won't have the facility to lock it up whenever the preschool is in session. So from a space standpoint and layout, it would significantly compromise all of the other space. And we're not ignoring the survey. We're taking in all of our surveys, including the several hundred people in each of our surveys who said we would really like to have a community center, and the 6,000 people who live in El Granada. We will work with Ray on runway and see how much runway he needs. But I think having done the research, to fit in a viable community preschool with a playground would leave us with about 1,000 square feet of space. It's just not reasonable for us to spend millions of dollars of public money only to deliver that, in my view. Matthew, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to make 2 points. On the survey, it is unfortunately easy to make too much of the results of a targeted survey like this. And the results reflect an entirely appropriate but coordinated effort by the childcare / preschool interest group to get their responses in. And we've been doing this for several years now, since we became a community services district. And I'll cite 2 other examples. When the skate ramp became a question, we had many skaters show up at our meetings and express their opinion. And you could get the impression that everybody in the entire community was a skater and really wanted more skate facilities. But the actual surveys don't show that. And then later we had the pump track folks who showed up and totally packed our meeting room. And you could get the impression that the entire community now all of a sudden are pump track advocates, and they're all going to go use it as much as possible. And again, this is appropriate that the members of the public come and express their opinions and in a coordinated manner. But we had that, I'll call it a contentious meeting in October, and the board just agreed to do another survey, and that survey was targeted for this question, and I think that explains a lot of the fact that it was the #1 response that was received. So I just want to ask everyone to realize that the district and the board have to consider the overall community, and we have responded, I believe, appropriately. The second point is that when, as has been repeatedly stated, the plan should be shown that will include a childcare/preschool facility. What that is really asking is that the entire existing building be dedicated to that use, because we're talking about the committee and Director Marsh have done a great deal of work researching on what's required for these kinds of facilities. And at 35 square foot per child, and the restrooms and the offices and et cetera, to have a preschool or childcare at the scale of what Picasso is now, which is we keep hearing there are 50 children there. Just multiply it out, how many square feet it is. It takes the entire front building. They're not asking for just fit it in. They want it. This is why the committee found that it basically wasn't feasible to have a community center and a child care or preschool facility in the same building. There isn't the space. So let's make it clear that that's what they're this group, and again, it's entirely appropriate that they're here and expressing their opinion and asking for what they want. But let's realize what they want is the status quo, and that will not result in the community center that the community has expressed repeatedly they very much desire. Thanks.
Jill?
Thank you. Okay, I have a lot to say. I'll try and make it short. First of all, I'd like to remind the board members of their past statements from the contentious October 2022 meeting, where they promised to follow up with a rigorous analysis. I remind you of this because I feel like a rigorous analysis did not occur. There were 3 flawed surveys. Feedback says they were confusing, and all the surveys did not attempt to survey all residents of El Granada. We know that. The GCSD did not conduct the special needs assessment that they promised in the October meeting. Who's going to use the building? They didn't do any research on it. I think it was David or Eric who said, what a shame it would be to let a building sit empty, because right now it's used 10 hours a day, 7 or 5 days a week, right? And Barbara already stated the center is going to serve all the coast, so maybe we should survey all the coast. We didn't research the process to amend the LAFCO agreement,
We didn't even look at that. We could amend it. We could add S, which would give us powers to build a community center and have licensed childcare. We didn't research this. We didn't reach out to other groups or ask for partnerships. Our original LAFCO agreement mentions partnerships that we said we'd do, but we haven't considered partnering with anyone, not for the Strip, not for the center, not with the county, not with the school district, Caltrans. I don't know anyone we've tried to partner with. We didn't research other dual purpose centers that have licensed daycares. We hired a great professional consultant, Dawn, she's great, but we didn't give her the task to research daycares or hire a subcontractor to do that or look at a dual purpose model. We just didn't do it. Then we relied on our board members who don't have expertise or background in that. It's no fault of your own. I don't have it either. But I did call Highlands Rec Center last week and talk to their director, and she said she'd never talked to GCSD. And they use a dual purpose model, and they have 48 children in a licensed daycare with 3 rooms that they use on the weekends for recreation, yoga, crafts, education. So why can't we? We didn't do that research.
They do
like
have,
clarify.
I did visit Highlands, though. They do have 3.5 acres.
I would like to clarify that the statement that based on licensing requirements, we cannot have a licensed childcare, that's incorrect. Picasso Preschool right now has met those requirements. So we have proof that other daycares are using a dual purpose model where they have both recreation and daycare. It's the same rooms, they just flip them. In the October 2022 meeting, one of our past board members who was unhappy asked, how can those who are unhappy with what is proposed communicate what they want? And the president replied, we will have a special meeting. So this is the special meeting. So I'm unhappy and I want to propose a plan. I even wrote it, a plan. Okay. 1, we're gonna put a pin in the design process. Dawn, I love your ideas, but we need to do more research. 2, research the process to amend the LAFCO Community Services District Agreement to add S for community center and a licensed daycare. LAFCO is composed of 2 board of supervisors. So let's get Ray Mueller involved. 3, we will merge the 2 properties. We already said we're gonna do this, the park and Picasso Preschool. Now we have more space for the daycare. We have more space. We can have a park and we can expand the community center. 4, let the MCC, the Midcoast Community Council, facilitate community outreach. They do it great, okay? They've offered to do it. They serve the surrounding communities and El Granada so they can get input from all the people who are gonna be using the park and the center. Then we need to reach out to partner. That's the most important step, and you do it before you do the design. You want to find out where you're going to get the money. I know right now that we could ask the county to use the multimodal, that path, you know, where they ripped all the riparian corridor out. So they have mitigation money to restore riparian. And we have a degraded riparian area. Why don't we ask the county for money? Get that taken care of. RCD can help us get that done. Why don't we ask Caltrans for their mitigation money? We could get them to pay for the seed. We could partner with them so we could use their right of way. So the whole area, the whole park could be seeded for free with Caltrans money. So I'm sorry, I'm a little upset because it seems like nobody's thinking outside the box. And I think the past board members, Eric and David, were spot on when they predicted that GCSD was steamrolling and that we would end up with a building that would just sit empty and we would displace 50 of our local families' children. My kids are grown up, but that upsets me. That's not just 50 children, okay? That's 50 families. That's not just once. you're going to do that over and over again. Sorry, I'm very upset over that. We really need to pause and look at that. We are bringing an end to a thriving community resource. It's very rare here on the coast, and they use the building right now. They use it 5 days a week, 10 hours a day, and they don't use it at times when other people want to do recreation because we're all working. Because of this, I don't want to move forward. And I want to encourage the other board members to own their past statements, especially the one that said, if there's a way to do it, I will support it. Okay, live those words. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see another hand, so I'll comment. I feel like that blows off about 15 years worth of work by many, many, many community members to see a community hub that includes a park and a community gathering space. I think some of the things that you mentioned were in the work that we did to check with nonprofits and other community partners who've shown an interest. And I wouldn't blow off the hundreds of people who answered surveys that didn't go to 100% of all of our district residents, certainly didn't reach some of the renters, but a 25% response rate in a voluntary mailed community survey is an excellent response rate. And I think we have to honor all of the voices of the community. If you want to know what the community thinks, you need to go out to the community, not just listen to the community that comes to you. I have actually drawn out on the space, and it just takes up, we'd be giving half to a third, depending on how we phase, of the space we have to use for what is ultimately a private enterprise, which is not within our scope, that serves a small and vital part of the community. I'm very happy that the supervisor is very motivated to move and to help in an equitable way. And I hope that provides a landing for a lot of families. But we represent 6,000 people, and a lot of them have asked for this asset for the community. And it will be what we make of it. We can, one time Matthew Clark said, sometimes things take a long time because we let them. And this is a process already, 5 years in the making. It's not a 3-month project. We're 5 years into this project. So from my view, as I understand what Dawn is asking us for, is simply to accept the conceptual drawing and authorize the schematic so it could go to CEQA, which is not yet getting into permitting. It's just CEQA with many more chances to look. My view would be that we make that move, we schedule the phasing discussion and have that discussion, but that we don't drag we find so many reasons to drag our feet. We're already 18 months into a process that we hope would take 2 years, and it will take at least 18 months more. And that's the downside, in my view, of how government works. We committed to a CRC 18 months ago. I think we need to move with the CRC. Barbara, go ahead. You're on mute, Barbara.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I think there were a lot of, particularly in that last comment, things that were not exactly accurate or whatever. A lot of us have been working for a long time very hard on this. Having said that, I don't want to hold a vote on this tonight. I think we need to have a phasing discussion. I do think it would be a good idea to create, it's pretty easy to create a graphic that shows the space that would be required on the site. I mean, I've sort of seen a rough version of it. As you know, I was one of the ones who wanted to see joint use from the beginning. But geometry prevented it. I like to sit down. I want people to know that we are working on partnerships. In fact, I've been working with the RCD and I'm putting together materials as we speak to try to make our case with some of these things, which will be reviewed by the appropriate people before they go out. But we've met with Caltrans, we've met with the county a number of times. We have a team working on this. It's just, this is not, anyway. So my proposal for tonight is that we schedule a discussion of phasing, which I think is appropriate. And let's not, I'm not saying delay it forever, but I'm saying I'm not ready to vote on this tonight. And again, I want to thank Dawn for a great job in putting together a good proposal. And I'm not sure people who are looking at the architectural renderings, yes, the color can change and some other parts can change, but that's renovating the building that's already there. It's not, we don't have the option, or the cost would be significantly more if we built a new building. So that's just a note that people may not realize that we're talking about modifying the building that's there, which is all wood in the front right now. So anyway, I would say that we have actually some other business we have to get to tonight. So I think perhaps, shall I make a motion to table this for just further discussion at a follow-up meeting? Would that be appropriate?
I'm seeing nods.
Okay, then I will make that motion.
Second it.
Jen seconded it. Any further discussion? Deal, you want to call the roll?
Sure. Director Clark?
Well, I think we have it. I don't think we even need it really more discussion or a vote. We have 3 directors who have expressed their opinion that we shouldn't move on this tonight. So I will go with that.
Oh, okay. I think that's fine.
Yeah, as will I.
Okay.
We'll need a roll call vote though.
Okay, we still have to do the roll call.
Yeah.
Okay, Director Clark?
What's a yes or a no mean?
Yes is to table it till a following meeting.
Yes.
Director Dye?
Yes.
Director Grant?
Yes.
Director Marsh?
Yes.
Director Randall?
Yes.
Okay, approved. Motion is approved.
Okay, I'm going to try to zip through some things here. Well, we're going to have a significant discussion on Burnham Park at our next meeting. So do we have anything we need to update tonight?
No, can wait till the next meeting.
Okay. We have a consideration of amendments to the district personnel model. As someone who previewed them with Chuck based on my previous HR experience, I would recommend approving.
Move approval.
Board discussion.
Move approval. I read through it. They seem very reasonable to me.
Nancy, you want to open it up for public comment before the vote?
Any members of the public who would like to comment on the personnel manual? Seeing no hands. Barbara made that motion. Did we have a second? I heard Jill say second.
I second, sorry.
Okay. Okay, Delia, you want to call the roll?
Yes. Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Dye?
Yes.
Director Grant?
Yes.
Director Marsh?
Aye.
And Director Randall?
Aye.
So the amendment are approved then.
Yeah.
The motion.
The motion to approve the amendments.
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, Nick, we're in the next, yeah.
Can I move up ahead of the report on SAM because I think these are also quick approvals, the district engineer's report and the capital improvement progress.
Actually, I would like to make a very quick report on sewer authority mid-coast before we talk about the district engineer's report and the additional expenditure.
Okay, go ahead.
We had a meeting of the finance committee, public meeting, and it looks as if the assessment for the cost of replacing the Montero force main, which is required to be done by June of 2024, will be somewhere around $11 million, of which we would be responsible for paying somewhere between 16%, which is what we're using now of the plant, somewhere between 16 and 20%. This is approximately triple, more than triple what we have been contributing for capital improvements at SAM. So this is going to be a big financial cost for us in the year ahead. So I just wanted people to be thinking about that. The fact that now doesn't really affect the parks budget, but it does. It's going to cut into our reserves, and it's going to be. We did just vote to raise the rates, but if this is the level of expenditures, and that may not be all of the expenditures that are required for the coming year, we still don't know how much of the problems of the flooding are going to be covered by insurance. So with that happy thought, let's go talk about our district engineers report and the expenditures, the additional expenditures that we're looking at there.
Are we going to come back to any more discussion on SAM?
Go ahead and do it now if you want to add something now, so we don't have to come back to it.
Well, I can't do this in a few sentences, but I just will. So I'll start by reminding everyone that our disbursements for February again show 68% of our outgo. It goes directly to SAM. And so we should pay more attention, I think. I hope that in the not too far off future that 68% of our outgo will be for parks. But right now,
that would be nice.
But right now, we're, more than 2/3 of our budget goes to SAM every month. And so we need to pay attention. Well, I have a lot of notes on what happened at the various meetings, but I can just make a comment about one at a couple of meetings, the Half Moon Bay representatives have expressed their opinion that the Montara force main needs to be bigger. And I think
it's gone away, though.
Pardon?
I think that's gone away.
Well, we'll see. I don't think their attitude that they have nothing to do with that pipeline has gone away.
No.
And I would just like to note that when the bypass was needed to repair the brakes in that, they used an 8-inch line, and there was a subsequent storm, and the 8-inch line was just fine. So I don't think there's any real justification for expanding that line. Sam has, I think this was in the newspaper, this emergency repairs have already cost Sam something over $1 million. And as Barbara's mentioned, we'll be paying our share of it, which will be about 16%. I would like to be, and I'm going to ask this again at the appropriate meeting, to find out what would have happened if they had not shut off our flow from the two northern agencies, because it's plainly stated in the manager's report that shutting off the flow from the north caused those leaks and breaks in the pipe. And so again, this is City of Half Moon Bay. There's their outflow flows no matter what, because there's no way to turn it off. And when they turn ours off at moments like that, it causes the system to fail, and we'll all be looking at large fines, which doesn't help rebuild what we need to rebuild. And I did have numerous other points, but it is already a long meeting, so let's move on.
I would also like to say that our new SAM alternate reps might want to consider watching a SAM meeting, especially in the near future when there's a lot of sort of dramatic stuff happening the Monday evenings, and they always finish by 9. So something to think about. So, because, yeah.
Better than tonight, but it was important discussion tonight. Okay, item 6, district engineers report, approved capital improvement project change order for the Columbus mainline repair in the amount of $74,000. I think this was mentioned at our last meeting as something that came up as just a small main that needed repair on Columbus Avenue at the top of Ferdinand. Any questions or comments?
Well, I'll tell you, I appreciated getting the diagram that shows where that is. Now, in the engineer's report that came tonight, it says that that the repair, all right, so tonight we're being asked to authorize the $74,000 repair, but he's also, and the repair of Ferdinand Sewer, but that's at $89,000. And then there's also another problem on the West Point Sewer. So tonight we're only being asked to authorize the $74,000 for Columbus, or it sounds as if we should also authorize the $89,350 for the Ferdinand Sewer. Reading the engineer's report.
Go ahead, Delia.
The engineer said that the Columbus Street repair was critical and that the other two could wait until our next capital improvement program. So
that's not what he's saying in his memo here. That was in our agenda.
Well, I did have some emails back and forth with him about that, and I thought I had printed it so I would have it handy, but of course I don't know where it ended up. But that was the understanding that I had from him. The issue in Princeton, I can't recall exactly, but I don't think that was a critical issue. And the one in Columbus has been actually a problem for a while, and it does affect the homeowners up there and the way the street is. He really felt that that was really the primary thing that we needed the change order for. This is what he presented to us. And this is what he provided to us. So I think the other two projects can wait.
If they're not on the agenda, I don't think we can.
No, we did not put that approval on there because he did not provide it to us. So this is what he provided to us to approve.
I don't like getting something from our engineers saying that repairs need to be made, but they can wait. So I'd like to have further discussion of that. I'm happy to authorize the Columbus sewer repair at $74,000. So I'd like to have the other come back to us at our next meeting.
Sure.
Because I think if we're going to do them, we want the current contractor to do them. And so we would want to negotiate that right away. So we shouldn't delay on it. So I guess tonight, all we can do is move approval of the work on the Columbus sewer.
I'll second.
I tend to be the motion maker. I'll make a motion to.
Barbara moved, Matthew second. Any further discussion? No. Delia, can you call the roll?
Yes. Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Dye.
Yes.
Director Grant.
Yes.
Director Marsh.
Yes.
And Director Randall.
Great. Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Item 7, I think this also is, this is capital improvement project progress payment number 1 in the amount of $167,000, $57.50. And the recommendation is to approve the progress payment.
That is correct.
Any questions?
Yeah, generally, this would be, something that would just be on warrants, but we usually approve them separately. 80% of the work has been completed from my understanding. So we do need to make that payment to them as soon as possible. There will actually be a second payment coming due on the next meeting, the second progress payment. So
move approval of the progress payment number 1 on the capital improvement program in the amount of $167,057.50.
Second.
Is that
Okay.
Clark or?
I think Clark just beat out Grant by half a second.
For 50 cents.
Any other comments? Okay, go ahead and call the roll, Dee,
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Grant,
Yes.
Director Marsh,
yes.
and Director Randall.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved 5-0.
Okay. Next is the consent agenda, which includes number 8, January 19th, 2023 regular meeting minutes, 9, February 2023 warrants, 10, December financial statements, 11, assessment district distribution.
Wow.
Number 44, 22, 23. Does anybody want to pull out any of those items? Not. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Matthew, second.
Second.
Barbara. Any other
Hey.
comments? Do you want to call the roll?
Yes, Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Grant,
Yes.
Director Marsh,
Yes.
and Director Randall.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Okay. Any number 12 is committee reports. Any committee reports? Moving on then, information calendar, attorney's report.
Just a reminder, we'll be in person next month. So for the first time in 3 years. So
Do we have a plan for how we're going to do that?
We will definitely do it the way we always used to do it because we know how to do that. Working with Delia and is working with Greg Dieguez on potentially sorting out exactly what equipment we need. PCTV is pretty sanguine about supporting hybrid meetings. We just need to sort out exactly what equipment we would need to do it. This is the format of Zoom that we would need to use so that we could manage in room and on Zoom communications. So we're working on it. At the very least, we will have a normal in-person meeting, but we're still working on whether we could, how to do a hybrid meeting, put it that way.
and just to clarify, hybrid meeting means the public can attend hybrid.
Right. Board members have to be in person.
Right. Except through other procedures.
So I will be there, but I will not be in that poorly ventilated tiny room with a bunch of people. I will sit on the deck with my computer and Zoom into the meeting if you like, but I'm not going to do that. It's not safe. I'm not doing it.
You'll have to post the deck.
I leave that up to our council for comment. I don't know.
I'll even bring a chair.
Well, I mean, the meeting, the governor has ended the executive order as of the 28th. So in-person meetings are going to be required unless you follow the remote procedures. And there's two different versions of those. There's the newer bill, which I tend to call it's so sort of Byzantine that it's probably not worth doing. And then there's the old style teleconferencing requires a quorum to be present in the district, and that each teleconferencing space needs to be posted, and the public has to be able to attend each teleconferencing space. And it has to be on the agenda and noticed on the agenda.
We can open all the windows.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. We actually have really good circulation if we open the windows in the office side and on the meeting side. So we can get some circulation and possibly buy some purifiers or something like that too.
Jill, can you work with Celia and Bill to figure out what you're going to do?
I'm sorry, what did you say, Barbara?
Can you work with Bill and Delia to figure out what you're going to do?
Yes. I just wanted to say I was distracted because a huge bolt of lightning just came down right on the strip.
Yeah. I heard the thunder. Yeah.
Thunder. I saw the lightning and thunder. I heard the thunder.
Okay.
Sorry, a newbie question. So if we've tabled the decision because we want to come up with a plan, how do we make that plan? So does that fall under the subcommittee of like Nancy and I? Like, would we need new like, how does that work? We have to wait till next meeting to decide. Like, we have a month between now and the next meeting. I'd like to make progress.
Less than a month.
Yeah, I think we agreed to have the phasing discussion before we make that choice.
Yes.
So I think we need to work that out with probably the general manager who has both projects in his line of sight.
Okay. So are you going to follow up with the general manager then?
Yeah, I'll take the action from the meeting to, when we set up the next agenda, we'll need to figure out what we need to do to prep for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We don't have a general manager's report. Administrative staff report, Delia?
In light of the length of this meeting, I'd say no, nothing further at this time.
Oh.
This is maybe
I would like to bring something up. First we have one application that was received, 2 permits were issued, and 1 sewer hookup was completed. So we are inexorably moving toward build out, and at some point that has to end. But Delia included a special note at the end and a map showing a property between Sam's Chowder House and the beach house, where a 3-story hotel is being proposed.
Yes.
It's important to understand that that's in the city limits of Half Moon Bay.
Yes, the referral came from the city. It is very preliminary because referrals are pre-planning, reach out to the other agencies that are involved. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up to let you know that it was new and it's going to be working its way through the city permitting process.
Well, talk about a sight line from our proposed community recreation center. That would be a great big block in it. And I would like to ask council, I can't remember what project it was, and I didn't have time to look it up, but previously one project had come up where GCSD should have been a responsible agency under CEQA and was not. And we had to make a big hullabaloo about it to get that status, I guess it was from the county. And Bill,
Big
we
way
have to provide service to this. Do you think that we should become a responsible agency for any CEQA work on this project?
We should be a responsible agency. Good.
That will help to illuminate this for our community, that yet another view blocking big building could go in there.
Okay.
Did we say anything about the IPS? No, just kidding.
Don't start a new topic, Bill.
No, I mean the hotel, and we're serving it. The irony doesn't escape me. So
yeah. It's almost like they want to put more flow into the IPS, but not pay for anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, last item 16, future agenda items. I have the project phasing board discussion, which Delia, we should target for March.
Okay.
And I also had the park review, including the park name.
And I wanted to request that and just comment about a great discussion that we had 2 official proposals, Burnham Park and Jetty Park. I have actually talked to a few people, and I'm inclining now toward just Granada Community Park. So it's more general. And as you heard tonight, there's the proposal for using Native American, even though there's no actual evidence of any Native American use of the property. So we will discuss all those things at our next meeting. We'll have to look at whether the park is ready to come for next month, since we're delaying. It's all going to have to go together. So this is going to delay everything. So let's not overcommit what we're going to do next month.
Okay, but it's on a future agenda item.
Yes.
Okay.
Got a lot to talk about.
Any other future agenda items? Bill, Jill, I see your hand up.
I would like to have an agenda item on the partnerships for the park and the center, other entities we've reached out to and the process and what's going on with that.
Okay. And are you, Jill, are you meaning specifically the partnerships that were mentioned in the LAFCO or partnerships in general?
Well, other board members have said there are partnerships going on and I'm not aware of them. So I'd just like to be brought up to snuff and the public too.
Okay. Okay, got that one. Any other?
And it's raining.
Oh, I have one public comment, Steve Hawk, probably, we don't have the park name on this agenda. So Steve, I'm going to let you comment, but we can't discuss if that's what you want to comment on. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I don't want you to discuss, but I just wanted to say that I've been on this meeting since almost 4 hours now, hoping to discuss the park name. So if you're going to discuss it next meeting, could you, if you're going to discuss it during the meeting, let us know much earlier. Because it wasn't until about a half hour ago that you said it's going to be pushed back.
It wasn't on the agenda for tonight, Steve.
Well, but Burnham Park was.
Just a general Burnham Park update. You're right. Well, actually, let's commit to giving some of a personal heads up.
Make the naming a separate agenda item.
We'll make it a separate agenda
item. That would have done us all. But just when I saw that the park was an agenda item, we thought the naming was going to be part of it.
Okay.
Not that
it's been a placeholder, but we'll make sure that's a special agenda item.
Great. Not that this hasn't been an enlightening and delightful meeting, but I did have something I wanted to talk about. So
yeah, you waited a long time. Apologies. We will make it a specific agenda item.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. And if there are no other future agenda items, then I think we are adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Oh, the lights just blinked.